Okay. We are on air. Perfect timing. Wow, it's like there are microphones and they can hear us and we can communicate. All right. Thank you so much, Alyssa, for being here. I am very, very, very excited about this. Oh, right, this? Oh, okay, here we go.
Hi,
Hi,
how are you?
happy as Larry. How are you?
Nice to see you all.
You too. Your hair is looking lovely.
Thank you. Got it cut recently.
Here for it.
I put together a little outline for you as well as some maps.
Nice.
And I thought I would just kind of give you an overview of the history of TIF District 1. And my understanding is the goal is to talk about the potential or possibility of extending this TIF district under the new legislation that was adopted 2 years ago now. So what I put together is a two-page handout that summarizes the history of this TIF district, when it was adopted, how many times it's been amended, and I'll go over this in more detail. But the property, the authorized uses, and then the second page includes a summary of the district extension options under the statute that we can talk about. And then there are 2 additional pages just for your reference that include maps from the most recent amendment of this TIF district, which show the original TIF district boundaries, as well as the current TIF district boundaries. The most recent amendment actually removed most of Twin Brook that was originally included in that district, and I'll kind of talk through that history. So that's what you have in front of you in terms of materials that I just handed out. And I wanted to kind of just go over this district in particular, what it was established for, how it's been used, and then we can certainly talk about the options to continue utilizing the TIF district going forward. So this district was originally adopted in 1996. It has been amended 3 times to date. The first amendment authorized credit enhancement agreements for Norton and Planet Dog. Norton obviously was constructed on Route 1 and then ultimately acquired, but the business still exists in that area. It was during that amendment, it was also extended to a full 30 years. It was originally adopted as a TIF district for 20 years. They added 10 years in that first amendment so that it captured the full 30 years. So the expiration date of this district is June 30th of 2027. So you've got a couple of years at this point to think about it, but it is coming up. The second amendment to this district authorized a credit enhancement agreement for the memory care facility that's on Route 1. And then the third amendment, which was most recently in 2017, changed the acreage of the district, and that's what these 2 maps represent. So when the district was originally created, you just might find this interesting. I don't think this was the case, but I think that there was a perception that districts had to be contiguous, and so the district consisted of the property on Route 1 that we're used to, as well as a 1-acre parcel, which consisted of the roadway connecting the 2 of them, and then the entirety of Twin Brook. And so the idea at the time was to promote development of what was referred to as a commercial business park on Route 1, where Norton and others are located or were located. And the connectivity to Twin Brook was to sort of entice commercial development through some of the recreational opportunities in town, and that the idea was that those 2 would be developed in conjunction with one another as sort of the appeal or to attract businesses to the Route 1 corridor. What happened ultimately is that businesses located on Route 1, and there was really no need to include Twin Brook, especially because the benefit of including the property in a district is to be able to use TIF revenue on the district. And the statute's pretty limited in terms of the ability to use TIF revenue on recreational areas. Has to really show a direct connection to some sort of economic development. Otherwise, it's not really eligible for TIF revenue. And this ended up being more of a town-wide recreation area. It was developed on its own, used on its own, and the Route 1 Business Park kind of did its own thing in terms of development. So there was no longer really a need to have the 2 connected it also turned out that the roadway did not need to exist in the district in order for those to be contiguous. So by the time the Third Amendment came around, we looked at this and said, you're taking up over 100 acres of your eligible TIF area with Twin Brook for no real purpose. So in the most recent amendment, all of that acreage came out. We did maintain the two building areas, the parking lot area, because that might be an area where you could actually utilize TIF revenue because people are coming to Twin Brooks and that's really kind of the primary spot that gets used in connection with the Twin Brook recreation area. So that still exists in the district, but that's 9 acres versus over 100 acres. And that's shown on the second map.
So a particular use that may benefit from that TIF area in Twin Brook area was if we wanted to provide electric charging stations, something like that. That would be a legitimate use of TIF.
I think that's possible. So some of the uses of TIF revenue in connection with recreation are to the extent that you could either identify that businesses, whether it's employees, visitors, et cetera, or as an attraction for people visiting the community as an economic development tool, might utilize, let's say, Twin Brook as the example. And to the extent that you could use that as an economic development tool to attract people to the community, whether it's for commercial uses or sort of, I'll call it, tourism is probably not the right word, but in the general sense, to come visit the community, those are ways that you can utilize TIF revenue, sort of the community attraction and commercial activity type. So if you've got events there, and you've got businesses who might utilize that, who have employees who might utilize it, those are possible uses of TIF revenue.
Another example might be therapeutic horse riding.
Sure. Yep, I think that's.
I'll stop now.
Did you have a question, Bailey?
So, we were just throwing this around some EV charger situation.
Into the mic.
Oh, sorry. EV chargers, electric vehicle chargers, as something that we can have around town and also potentially a source of revenue. Could we use TIF funds to cover the cost of that?
So I think it's possible. Again, there has to be a connection to some sort of commercial development or economic development, but I can foresee how you could make that connection in terms of the use of your TIF revenue, especially in connection with commercial corridors and where people are actually going between whether it's employees or it's visitors or business owners, et cetera. So it's not specifically identified in the statute, EV chargers as an eligible use of TIF revenue, but the categories are much broader. So we would just have to find a category that fits within and outside of a district. And there are, as we've talked about before, categories of uses of TIF revenue in districts as well as outside of districts. And so Twin Brook happens to be in a district now, but to the extent that it's not in the future, that doesn't necessarily preclude it from being an area where you can use TIF revenue.
Okay. Because I think the whole thought there with EV charger locations is like, let's put them places that people can actively be pursuing things while their cars are being charged. So it's really promoting the use of our trail systems and then also a benefit for them to be able to charge their cars. So we should chat more about that.
A lot of times, just as by way of example in terms of recreational areas, a lot of times the way that TIF revenue gets utilized is in connection with an area where there are also businesses. And, that's not necessarily the case with Twin Brook, but that's a common use where, a waterfront or whether it's a lake or a stream or anything where people can park. They might have an EV charger, but they could walk to visit a restaurant or a store or a business or something along those lines. So that type of connection is really easy to make under the statute. That's not to say that there aren't other ways to do that, but that's just an example of how I see it get used commonly.
There was a couple of years ago, or 2 years ago, I think, as part of the CIP requests, the fire department had mentioned maybe putting in some chargers in West Cumberland, and if we're looking at the larger Route 100 development, right? Like that could also be, and like maybe you could make the case there because if we're looking, a different TIF zone, right?
Yeah.
But just another
Walkability.
Yeah. And baseball, softball, like chop, brew through, caddies, get your snacks while your car's charging.
I'm here for it.
Absolutely. So in terms of the original district for TIF District 1, as I said, as it exists today, it primarily consists of the businesses on Route 1. So we've got Norton, the memory care facility, Toddle Inn, the Rockwood condominiums, Lucinda's Day Spa, and the Art of Dentistry. That's what you see kind of in the upper right-hand corner of the map here in terms of property within the district. That's about 83 acres currently. And the uses of TIF revenue really haven't changed much since the original adoption in 1996. So when this got amended in 2016 and 2017, the town didn't do anything to address or change the use of TIF revenue in the district. All that did was authorize additional credit enhancement agreements and change the acreage of the district. So the original uses of TIF revenue, which were amended in 2005, but originally adopted in 1996, included sewer, road, and sidewalk improvements along Route 1, portions of the new fire station, which at the time was kind of a different provision under the statute, not quite as generous as it is today, extensions of water lines and other environmental improvement projects, a master plan for Route 100, and funding of a portion of economic development director and other administrative expenses associated with economic development. So you've probably seen in TIF districts, other TIF districts that the town has, as well as the statute, and I know we've kind of talked about that at a high level. There are a lot of other uses of TIF revenue. This district could include those. It hasn't. It's been pretty targeted to development in this area of Route 1, which is a perfectly acceptable use of a TIF district. But, in terms of thinking about the future of the TIF district, there isn't a lot of time left on this district to think about really expanding the uses under the statute. The potential for extending the TIF district is much more limited and targeted towards the provisions under the statute that relate to affordable housing and transit. So, for example, and I say that because, if you had another 10 years left on this district and you were thinking about extending it beyond that, you might think about expanding the uses of TIF revenue now for the next 10 years, as well as targeting the use of TIF revenue towards affordable housing and transit for the extended term. I don't necessarily think that would be worthwhile for the town for another 2 or 3 years, but certainly something you could think about. If you felt like there was revenue in the district now that you wanted to apply outside of the credit enhancement agreements to other eligible TIF uses before you extend it, you can certainly think about that for a couple of years.
Can you change your uses at any given year in the period of the TIF?
So,
You don't have to limit yourself to, I have to make that decision today, even though I'm going to extend it?
you can. You just have to go through an amendment process, which means you as a council say that this is what we want to do, as long as it's authorized under the statute, and you submit an application to DECD, which is, it's a review to ensure that you're being consistent with the statute. So as long as you are, it's not as though they would tell you, no, you can't do that. But you just go through that process. So you'd look at your TIF district, you'd hold a public hearing, you'd identify the uses, submit that to DECD for approval, and then you have, those additional uses for whatever time period. And that's not uncommon, especially because the statute changes. It's, it's evolved over the 20 plus years that these districts have been in place, and new uses get authorized under the statute. And so that allows a municipality to adopt those. But that's really the key. If the statute says you can do something with TIF revenue, that's great, but you can't do it unless your development program also says that you can. So you have to really adopt that at the local level as well.
So when you talk about your development program, I mean, one of the reasons why we wanted to have this dialogue now is because we're embarking on beginning the comprehensive plan. And so we thought that it would be good for this to be a tool in their toolkit. So I'm trying to make sure that I understand what's allowed and what's not. So if we want them, how do I say this? In order for us we have to use 75% of the captured revenue in TIF 1 on either affordable housing or transport extension, right? So if the comprehensive plan comes back and on their own has talked about expanding affordable housing or expanding transport, that consists of kind of that development plan, right? It becomes documented?
No, so
No,
that
okay.
is, that I would categorize that or classify that as sort of a policy direction. The
Okay.
comprehensive plan committee could come back and say, this is what we think you should do.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to actually enact that and effectuate it, the council would have to amend TIF District 1. So that is a separate process
Okay.
from whatever recommendation you might get from the comprehensive plan committee in looking at that.
But they're symbiotic, right? Like we would
Sure.
want to, if, you know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to make sure that that we're not extending it too early and then saying, hey, you know, you need to focus the comprehensive plan on affordable housing and transportation. Like we want the comprehensive plan to be an organic process where the community is coming together and unpacking on their own what those kind of priorities are. And so I was just kind of curious about the flexibility that we have and whether or not there is an urgency in passing or potentially expanding the district now, or if it's okay for them to do their work, or if that kind of even matters, because with the development plan, can that just be separate policy that's not part of the comprehensive plan? Is that what you were kind of poking at?
Yeah, so the development program is a standalone document.
Okay.
It is a legislative decision of the council.
Okay.
Separate and independent from the comprehensive plan. It is, I think, a best practice to have have it be consistent with your comprehensive plan and for your comp plan to guide how you're utilizing it. But it is its own document, and
Okay.
it governs the use of a TIF district. The council could take action at any time to amend this, whether you want to extend it or not, or terminate it, notwithstanding any recommendations of the comprehensive plan committee. Obviously, you may not want to do that, but you can. You have the discretion to change this development program at any time. You would go through a process, meaning you would determine, you'd have a discussion around what that would look like. You'd have your own public hearing. You'd make a formal amendment to the development plan. So we would amend the document and then we would submit it to DECD for final approval. But that all can happen on its own, regardless of where you are in the comprehensive plan process.
Okay.
Again, you may not want to, and it certainly makes sense to have the two, I think, inform one another, but they are kind of independent from one another.
Okay, thanks, that's helpful.
And in terms of urgency, I think this is a good segue to the next section on page 2 in terms of the option to extend the district. For purposes of TIF District 1, there really isn't urgency. I mean, you're coming into the time period where I think it's appropriate to consider, but it's not like we've got 6 months left on this. You've got until June 30th of 2027 on this district. And the legislation that allowed extension gives communities a 10-year window. So from the effective date of that law, which was in 2023, and the 10 years following that through 2033, municipalities have the option to extend districts. So it was limited under the statute for this window. Whether that gets extended in the future remains to be seen. But for now, for this 10-year period, municipalities have the option to extend existing TIF districts an additional 20 years, as long as they meet the criteria for using the revenue that you're capturing in the TIF district, at least 75% of it for either affordable housing or transit purposes.
That revenue of the 75%, is that what's in there? Or is that revenue, if we decide to extend in 25, and is the 75% revenue from 25 for the next 20 years? Or is it everything that's been in there and is still sitting there, and now all of a sudden all of that is also captured in that 75%?
So typically, DECD's position would be that if you have TIF revenue, and let's sort of set aside the extension option for now, if you have TIF revenue in the district and you're coming up on your expiration date in 2027, it should all be spent. There's recently been legislation to allow municipalities to use TIF revenue to pay debt service on bonds for up to 3 years after the TIF district expires. But the general rule prior to that was all that revenue should be spent by the time the district ends, because they don't want you capturing money and sort of setting it aside when it otherwise should be in the general fund. So if we follow that rule with this new extension program, there really should be a clean break between the revenue that came in prior to the original district termination date and then the revenue that's coming in after the extension. Ideally, and I know that that's probably easier said than done, but ideally that's how we should look at it, that there's going to be a program where you're kind of following the original TIF district expenditures and capture, and there needs to be a date on which you're really in the extension period and you're dedicating the revenue, at least 75% of the revenue towards these new purposes. So there shouldn't be overlap between the revenue.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that kind of segues into where I was going to go with this. Like, the first question is, I only have 20 years. And if I start the clock today, by extending it, my 20 years starts. If I wait till 2027, just before expiration, then my 20 years starts at that point. However, you commented about paying a bond, so that's something that I have in the back of my mind. If I wanted to fund an affordable housing project, go to the commercial bank, have a bond, borrow the money, but I'm paying the debt down with my captured revenue from the TIF. That meets the criteria of what the law says.
It does. It does. Yep. So as long as 75% of the revenue that you're spending is going towards paying down those bonds, and the bonds were used to finance construction or something else with respect to the affordable housing, then that would satisfy the requirement to spend the revenue. And it is authorized now under the statute to use TIF revenue to pay bonds, and it continues to be for this purpose.
So if I have a rental project and I'm generating $750,000 of revenue from that, can I take that revenue, this is a convoluted question, can I take that revenue and put it someplace else even though I'm paying the bond down with TIF money, or do I have to?
So the rental revenue versus the tax revenue? Is that the distinction that you're making? When you say revenue, what kind of revenue?
I have a rental property.
Yep.
I've got half a dozen rents in there. They generate, let's just say, $1,000 a month, and so there's 6 units at $6,000 a month, and 6 times 12, $72,000 a year of income. But I want to take that income, and I want to go do something else with it. I want to go build a swimming pool.
Yep.
Can I take that TIF money and pay that bond, and then use my income elsewhere, or does that not pass a straight face test?
You can. So you've got the TIF revenue is generated through property tax payments that are sheltered in the TIF district, and that TIF revenue can be applied towards paying down the bonds to build the affordable housing. The income that you receive from the rent on those properties is income that goes to the town's general fund, and you get to determine how that gets spent in the same manner as you would with other general fund revenue through the budget process.
I also could reduce the cost of my rents and make them even more affordable.
Certainly. Yep.
So your hypothetical is not taking place inside of this district, though, correct?
That's correct.
So my follow-up question would be, well, not the question, I mean, the intent, as I understand it, of a TIF district is you're putting the money back into that district for, unless it, is on the list of other things that can be used outside of that. So is that a qualified use to do that and then apply this hypothetical Bob project to another area?
Yes, so under the current statute, affordable housing is an eligible use of TIF revenue both inside the district and outside of the district. Okay. This extension program is new, as you know. So I think what we're going to see is as we go through applications with DECD, some of the details of how the existing statute gets applied to this extension are going to have to be worked out. I mean, I've had a number of conversations with DECD's office already around transit in particular, to be honest with you. There's some very specific provisions about transit in the statute that really don't get referenced in this extension provision. And so there's this question of, well, does transit have to be in the district along the lines of what you're asking about affordable housing? Because typically transit does. It's even more limited under the statute than affordable housing. And is it supposed to be a transit district, and does it have to be a transit area? And those things are here on your sheet for reference because those are very narrow or narrowly defined. A transit corridor, for example, is a strip of land of any length but up to 500 feet on either side of a roadway. So that's a pretty narrow area. A transit-oriented development area is any shape provided the perimeter is no more than a quarter mile from an existing or planned transit facility. So, those are pretty narrowly defined under the statute already. Affordable housing is not as narrowly defined. It was actually pretty broad in terms of how it got incorporated into the statute to enable communities to use TIF revenue on affordable housing both in a district and outside of a district. So my expectation is that, absent other changes in the legislation, that DECD will apply this extension to the statute as it is now, and they will allow uses of TIF revenue in the same way that they do now, which means for affordable housing that's in a district and outside of a district. Whether that changes as these, communities start submitting applications and we go through, legislative processes over the next 10 years, DECD may have input and say, well, we think it should go this way, or we think it should be handled this way. And that remains to be seen at this point. But under the existing statute, affordable housing, to your scenario, could be in the district and outside of the district.
Go for it.
So with the 75%, and I know that you're not quoting in here, but is it affordable housing or transit, or is it affordable housing and or transit?
Actually, let me look at the statute and tell you for exactly. I brought it with me.
It says or.
I think it is or, but I can tell you for sure.
However, transit-oriented development talks about having housing and businesses and all sorts of things around it as a zone.
Yeah,
I can't imagine it would be exclusive, one from the other,
I would think it would be and or, but
in a combination.
I also didn't write it, so.
Yeah. I'll amend it.
You're running for office?
It's an or, so a district may be extended an additional 20 years if the district uses at least 75% of the tax increment financing revenue for affordable housing projects or transit-oriented development.
So it sounds like if we wanted to do housing, we would be doing housing and no transit and vice versa?
I think so. I think so, but again, I mean,
Like,
if we could make a straight-faced argument under the statute that a combination makes sense, we would approach DECD with that and see what their take is on it. I mean, ultimately, they have to approve these, so we'll read the statute and interpret it the way that we think is reasonable, and we can kind of make our case to them if we think that that meets the intent of the statute.
question. The paper, it has the 2 bullet points of affordable housing and transit-oriented development. And under transit-oriented development, it talks about transit facilities linking to housing with complementary public uses like jobs, retail, services, in corridors and nodes of transit. So transit, to me, from this at least, sounds like it's more inclusive, like it's housing and retail and all of this combined. But housing, does housing mean affordable? Does it mean any kind of housing you want? Can it be affordable? So,
Well, yeah, housing has to be affordable, and that's defined as by income limit per house, per household. It can be any kind of housing. So, I mean, in other words, it can be rental housing, it could be ownership, whatever the structure is, doesn't necessarily matter. But the income levels are restricted under the statute in terms of what constitutes affordable. Transit has to meet really all of those definitions. So, the goal is that you're either in a development area, transit development area, or a transit development corridor, and it has to connect those types of facilities as they're defined here with, with those transportation systems.
right, okay.
So if we wanted to put a train stop off Styles Way and affordable housing there, we'd have to go and make a strong argument
Yeah.
that we can use the 75% for both of these as opposed to only for the transit and then not at all for the housing.
I think that that's reasonable, just in terms of my understanding of the intent of this statute. That if you were to make an argument that the intent, or that you intend to use at least 75% of the TIF revenue from a district extension on a project that incorporates both affordable housing and transit, I think that's a reasonable argument. I mean, ultimately, it's DECD, they have to approve it, but I would certainly be comfortable making that argument, and I think
We're reasonable people.
I think that meets the intent of the statute. I mean, again, it's not any more specific than you've seen, so it doesn't address that scenario, but I would not have any problem approaching them with that type of proposal.
So the acreage, so it's 5% of total acreage is the cap, right? And we're at like 4.74 or something.
Yeah, I didn't bring the current number with me, but it is close.
It's like 82 acres or something like that.
That we have left to play with.
Yeah.
So I guess my other thought is, it would make sense to look at how much revenue TIF 1 is currently generating, right?
Bullet points
To,
to ask.
yeah, because
Like,
we
do
want to
even-
know
yeah.
if there are other opportunities, right? It might make sense to look at other areas because ultimately they might generate more, and that would be a better way to fund some larger projects, right? So were we able to maybe, like, because I think I mean, for me, I'm just totally ignorant of what other areas we could look at. You know, if we were to let it expire, what is it, just kind of finding, you know, like certain zones where there are lots available, or like what, Matt, what's kind of the best practice there?
Well, right now it generates, TIF 1 is roughly $350,000 annually is what that generates. One of the, it's the, I guess you could say it's the third smallest of the TIF revenue ones, but it is the one that's most, you know, basically the clock's on that one right now, and it's going to expire in 2 years. You can actually accomplish quite a bit with that if you think about that. I was just doing some, I guess you could call it some back of the napkin type of calculations, but if you figure it at 355, it's roughly $266,000 annually, which is 75% of that revenue. For a 20 years extension, you're about just over $5.3 million is what you would have that could be applied towards, you know, towards Councilor Vale's concept if you were looking at something along those lines. That's a nice resource. You can accomplish a lot with that in that vein. Or if you wanted to do a public-private partnership, you could accomplish a lot. You could even leverage that more. Or if there were matching, Lord only knows where it's going to be over the next 20 years. If there's other government resources out there that you could end up using that as a local match to leverage that into those. So there are a lot of opportunities that kind of funding could present to the town to work with. And then in the future, as others get closer to expiration, you could look at that as an option as well. But your next one is 2030, fiscal year 2035 is TIF 2. So you've got quite a bit of time on your hands to figure out that, and that's your second to smallest revenue generator, and that's like $340,000 a year is what that nets out to. So between those two, you could accomplish a great deal. So it's definitely worth considering. And looking at that amount of revenue that you could use for that type of operation, it's I guess you could say it's a good trial balloon to use with that. Instead of tying up, some of your larger TIFs that generate, in the $2 to $3 million category. Yep. That's a lot of dough. Mm-hmm. But you don't know if as Alyssa says, you don't know if you're going to be able to spend that all over 20 years.
Yep.
Whereas this, you're going to be able to do that, and there may be some additional funds that are needed to do that. But you can accomplish a lot with that. Make sure you meet the requirements of that TIF and expend all those accumulated funds, versus being at the end and saying,
Right.
what are we going to build? Because we've got way too much money tied up here. So that's a decent number to work with, I think, to get you started and to see what our other opportunities are.
How much is in the district now? Like, if it was to expire, how much is Is that the number you gave?
Well, that's what its annual revenue is. A lot of that is used, you know, I will say the prior manager did a really good job making sure that it was allocated.
Okay.
And trying to make sure it was either close to flat line or deficit spent.
Okay.
To make sure that you didn't have let's just say, an accrued amount at the end
Right.
to try to figure out how that is. And oftentimes towns do run into that, just because they haven't, you know, I know we ran into it in Gray a number of years back with the water line TIF that was done. They had to figure that out really quick, how they were gonna use that money. And they did. I mean, some could say it's a nice problem to have. It's still a problem. So it's best to have a plan versus a problem, I guess. So I think this gives you an opportunity to plan in that case.
It might be helpful just to think about as well, in conjunction with what Matt's saying, that the benefit of extending a district is to keep your base value where it is. So when you've got a district that has a lot of increased value and a lot of revenue for you to capture, that's a great thing if you know, as Matt was saying, if you know where you want to spend that revenue going forward on these types of projects. But it's just one option. So to the extent that you have existing districts, and the town does, that are performing well and have a number of years left on them, another thing you could do is look at those districts and identify whether they have these as authorized uses of TIF revenue, because these are existing authorized uses of TIF revenue in the statute. It's not as though this extension is the only way you can use TIF revenue for affordable housing and transit. So you could look at existing districts. Many of them, especially the more recent ones, include a pretty broad list of uses. So some of them already have these. Others don't, but may be performing well, and you may have an opportunity to use some of that TIF revenue for 10 or more years on an existing district towards these types of projects without having to extend. But at the very least, you may want to look at it holistically and see how each district is performing, what each district is authorized to utilize TIF revenue on, and then think about that in connection with extension of districts that are coming due for sort of expiration, because there may be other opportunities to capture or use captured revenue in this same way.
With the TIF funds, Matt, you mentioned something about matching it all, and I don't know which one of you this is the better question for, but do those funds, the fact that they're in a TIF district, preclude them being used for any sort of like federal state matching grants? Or are there any like other restrictions in that sense? If we want to do an affordable housing thing and then the feds have money and then can we leverage this to match and use that, or would we have to use other funds to match for the federal match?
It would just need to be, provided that the federal funds were targeted for something like affordable housing. It just needs to be within the category of an eligible use. So the fact that it is being used to match, grant funds or other things is perfectly fine as long as it's within a use category that's authorized.
So to that, Councilor Magoon, like on the transit side of it, there's usually a lot more money at play on the transit side of it. So you can oftentimes use those and that would be part of the allowed use if you did extend of the 75%. So you could use part for housing or part for transit. If you wanted to leverage them, oftentimes you can use those funds to leverage a significant amount more on the federal side, especially on the transit side. But yeah, as Alyssa said, as long as it's an allowed use within your district and as part of your plan, then you should be good to go.
I mean, an example in the affordable housing context that gets used frequently now is not necessarily to match funds, but more often than not, it's a credit enhancement agreement to a developer who was leveraging, really low interest financing programs or grant programs. And so they're putting together this, stack of financing, and a credit enhancement agreement, which is TIF revenue being reimbursed to them, is just part of that overall financing plan. But they have the ability to access the low-income housing tax credits and all of these other programs through Maine State Housing. So that's a way that you can use TIF revenue. So if you, as the community, are not building it or financing it, you can assist with a developer who's doing so.
How does land acquisition fit into this?
So land acquisition is permitted, but it's typically within the district, so it's a little bit more limited in terms of the use of TIF revenue.
If you have a specific use, and it's outside the district, that's affordable housing?
So, I mean, I will tell you that the statute only references land acquisition as an authorized project use within the district specifically. Whether we could justify that outside the district is more of an open-ended question in terms of, interpretation about what's connected, but land acquisition is expressly referenced in the statute within a district.
One other question. So in the handout, it says that the affordable housing is kind of defined as 120% of the median income as defined by HUD. And so that's the standard. It's not MISHA.
That's right.
So, okay, so we would be, so that would have to be taken into account, because if you remember when we were working, or when we were looking at the Westbrook project, it was MISHA's standards, not HUD standards. So that's really important to know.
variance, do you
Yeah,
know?
do you happen to know if there's a big variance?
Well, some of the programs through Maine State Housing are 80 or 100% of the area median income for financing purposes. So
Okay.
that tends to be the variable that I see. If a developer is proposing a project and they're getting financing that sets a more stringent requirement for affordability, then, we have to comply with that. That's typically what I see in terms of a variance. Most of them rely on the same data
Okay.
from HUD.
Okay.
It's just a matter of the threshold for affordability
Got
in
it.
terms of what's required.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
But we'd still be able to do that if the financing is 80% and this goes up, may not exceed 120, we'd still be able to do
Yeah.
something like that.
Thanks. Any other questions? No? Melissa, thank you as
Welcome.
always.
Absolutely.
Unless anyone has any questions, thank you for being here, and, oh yeah, go
Just
go for it.
the real quick, hopefully, there's no it expires on June 30th, 27, but there's no, the decision must be made 60 days before or 180 days before or anything like that.
Nope, as long as it's done before the expiration. I mean, ideally, so I will just, 30 to 60 days is
Well,
at
yeah.
least is great, because you have to have a public hearing and you have to submit it to DECD. So, certainly plan a couple months in advance to just get through the process and get an application in. The way that DECD is handling these extension requests is the same way as we currently do amendments. So we'd fill out an application, council would hold a public hearing on whatever you decide as a policy matter to utilize this on, and then we'd submit it to DECD, and as long as that's in before the expiration date, then you have preserved your opportunity.
One more question, sorry.
Yeah.
The land acquisition piece. So, just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, so in theory, we could not purchase land unless it was in the district, the said existing district. However, what if it was for economic development? Would that change anything, or still?
So my view of the statute is it doesn't.
Okay.
The economic development purposes under statute, again, land acquisition is specifically referenced within the district for a number of uses. It's not specifically referenced in connection with economic development. And my view
Okay.
of that is, if they intended for it to be used that way, that they would have
Stated it.
referenced it that
Yeah.
way.
Okay.
And I don't tend to see it. Usually, the land acquisition
Is separate?
is something that is a use of TIF revenue within the district.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that count for affordable housing? Can you make the argument, a good faith argument that affordable housing project, because you're doing the affordable housing project, and part of that project is to acquire the land and then build affordable housing on it using this, or would you have to acquire the land with other revenue and then use the TIF revenue to actually put something on that land?
Yeah, we can certainly ask DECD for an opinion if it's property that you identify outside the district and you want to use TIF revenue to acquire the land. I typically don't see that outside of the district. Usually, if you're going to acquire, you can do it in connection with the project and acquire the land, but usually it's inside a district. So you've created a district, or you've identified property in the district. You acquire the parcel and you use the TIF revenue for that reason. I just frankly haven't seen it done that way outside of the district, and especially in the context of these new extensions. I think it's just a question for DECD in terms of what their comfort level is in interpreting the statute that way, because it doesn't otherwise say that that's
Yeah.
authorized.
Okay, I think we're on the same page. Cool.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Drive safe.
Well, I'm going to stick around for the Friends
Yes, you-
School.
Oh, sorry, conduit financing. We're keeping you for the whole night. We are on air. Perfect. Welcome, everybody, and happy almost Halloween. Happy spooky season. It is my pleasure to call, sorry, Denise, to call today's Council meeting to order. It is Monday, October 28th. We had a 6 p.m. workshop with the town attorney looking at the TIF 1 extension, which is a really interesting kind of topic, and I encourage you to check out the recording of that workshop if you were interested in TIF districts. The first up on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from October 7th, 2024.
Give you a motion.
Take one.
Anyone?
Is there a second?
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 All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay. All right, next up is our manager's report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just technical difficulties here for a second. Sorry, I apologize. Good evening, and I hope this evening finds you well. I'd like to provide you with an update on the current status of our town operations and highlight some key initiatives that we're currently working on. Service delivery. Our departments are currently working to continue and maintain a high standard of service. Service delivery, Jennifer Doughton, who's here this evening as well, our town clerk and her staff are in full election mode, processing 3,452 absentee ballots requests as of today, with the final day of absentee voting this Thursday. Election hours will be on November 5th from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. here at Town Hall. And property traffic and parking directions are available on the town's website, and we will have traffic control assistance on the property all day on Election Day. Try to help people move through efficiently and help them get their job done. Our fire department held a training session this past Thursday evening in West Cumberland with 3 different scenarios of a dumpster fire, a car fire, and a simulated structure fire. It was quite lively in the town, in the West Side Center. On Saturday, our Parks Department, Recreation, Police, Public Works, and Fire EMS were all involved in assisting the Maine Principals Association Regional Cross Country Championships meet at Twin Brook. They will also be there this weekend coming and assist as the hosts of the state championship meets at Twin Brook. This happens every other year, and this year it's in Cumberland, and next year's state championship meet will be held in Belfast. We've successfully held a confidential shredding event, electronic waste disposal event, and upcoming on November 9th, there'll be an oversized item drop-off event from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Public Works facility on Drown Road. The first 2 events saw positive participation from residents, and we anticipate a strong response to the oversized item drop-off as well. A listing of the accepted oversized items is available on the town's website. This past Saturday, the town participated in the National Prescription Drug Take-Back Day, which brought in an estimated 45 pounds of unused, unwanted, and expired medications. This service is in addition to the drop box in the police department lobby that is employed by residents to dispose of these medications throughout the year. Active Living held a luncheon today. 86 people attended, and there was a spaghetti and meatball luncheon. Active Living will also be hosting a Christmas Day luncheon from 12 to 2 on Christmas Day at the Valhalla Recreation Center. If you are interested in attending, you can make reservations by December 3rd with the Active Living Department. On this Sunday, November 3rd, from 3:30 to 5:30, the town will be hosting a Veterans Geriatrics and Extended Care Town Hall and Resource Fair at the Community Center at Valhalla. This is for veterans, spouses of veterans, or caregivers to a veteran who have questions or concerns about geriatric or extended care-focused programs. We're working to add additional emergency medical tech paramedics to our department and are advertising these opportunities currently. Chief Small and Deputy Chief Turcott are planning to attend the council workshop on November 25th to discuss the fire and EMS departments current work and update the council on our discussions with Falmouth, as well as regional EMS work with Cumberland County. We have one new police officer starting with the police department next month, who's slated to start at the police academy in January, bringing the department up to full staffing. Current construction projects of note, construction is about to begin on the Rusty Lantern in West Cumberland. We met and held a pre-construction meeting with their project team last week. Demolition is slated to begin shortly, with completion anticipated between Memorial Day and July 4th, depending upon conditions. On Thursday evening, GP-COG and PAC's Northern Region meeting will be held here in the council chambers from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on Wednesday to discuss such items as transportation, community priorities, and member services. And the Northern Region is Cumberland, North Yarmouth, Yarmouth, Falmouth, and Freeport. I want to thank the council for your continued support and commitment, and please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or need additional information.
So not much going on then.
We keep trying, Madam Chair. We've got great people doing really good things, so thank you.
Love to hear it. Thank you, Mr. Manager. Next up, we have public discussion. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. Is there anyone here who would like to come up to the podium? Sure. If you wouldn't mind, just I think you know, but state your name and tell us where you live, please.
Bruce Sherwin, Blanchard Road. I'm here to talk about artificial turf again, because I think it's still a very important topic, and it has not gone the way that it should in our school district and our town. By that I mean it hasn't been voted on truly so that the town can really have its vote. It was sort of tied in, masqueraded in with the school, and not given its own vote. And the school vote only won by 49 votes. 25 votes the other way would have been it would not have passed. But besides that point, I want to talk about it in another way. I don't know how many people know this, are aware of this, but the Greeley soccer boys are rated #1 in Maine Principal Association's tournament in B South. The Maine the Greeley girls soccer team is #1 in B South. The Greeley field hockey team is #6 in the tournament. So, and the football team, the tournament hasn't started yet. They were in second place. I don't know if they still are. They were 6-1. They beat Morse. They're now 7-1. I'm not sure where they are, but they're doing very well. Greeley, over the years, I've been here 43 years, and Greeley has a reputation of being extremely competitive. But even beyond that, they've won many sportsmanship awards, and they set a standard for our town to live up to. I coached for over 20 years in middle school, and one of the things that we talked about many times before games and in practices, but before games, was we represent Greeley. We've got to look and act a little better than other people. Greeley has high standards. I think that Cumberland, North Yarmouth, Greeley, the standards are such that really if we held another vote, it would not support artificial turf, which is a known climate problem, global warming problem, and if you look into it, it has a lot of other environmental problems. It is not up to Greeley standards, in my opinion. And some people have said that we need it to be more competitive. Well, I just told you where the fall teams are. I don't think we need our artificial turf to be competitive. So my goal, and why I once was a head buyer at a grocery company for a long time. I went to a meeting with Coca-Cola with other companies. And the guy there in charge of advertising said, when you get working on something and you want get some results, you can't take your foot off the gas. You must keep your foot on the, so I'm keeping my foot on the gas on this. All I'm looking for from the school board, and I'd like to get some support from some other people out there in TV land, on the town council, anywhere in town. All I'm asking for is a strict up and down vote on artificial turf so we can know that Greeley supports that or doesn't. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Are there any other folks who'd like to come up to the podium? All right, we will close public discussion and move on to legislation and policy. Just one note that there is an opportunity for public comment per Article 2, Section 7 of the Town Charter. There will be an opportunity for public comment on each item on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. I will note that we did receive some emails from residents today, and we will be including all of those into the public record. I apologize for not writing back earlier. I had a full day of meetings and haven't had a chance to respond individually to all of those emails, which I will do tomorrow. But we will make sure to include all of those emails in the minutes. So first up is 24-119 to appoint Clinton Sweat as tax assessor for a 3-year term. This is great. Is Clint here this evening? Hi, welcome. Do you want to just come up really quickly and introduce yourself? You don't have to if you don't want to.
Madam Chair, I'd be happy to intro our new
please.
assessor as well. This evening, we're really happy to bring Mr. Sweat forward as our candidate for the assessor position. He comes to us after a progressively advancing career. Started with the town of Freeport, worked with the town of Brunswick, and then recently comes from the town of Cape Elizabeth, where he was the tax assessor there for the past 7+ years. And he's had a great run, and lives over in Freeport. And I was really happy. I've known Clint for well over 20 years, I guess now, and he'll be a great addition to the team. So we brought him forward this evening to be sworn in, and then and he can introduce himself better than I just did, but he is to be sworn in, and by charter, it's a 3-year appointment, and just on a recurring standard, but this is one of the council appointments that comes up, so that's why we've brought this forward for council action tonight.
Well, it's our pleasure to do so. Go ahead.
We going to give him a chance to say something?
Yeah, sure. Let's hear. I don't know if tax assessors want to be seen on television. I know it could be a little bit of a scary conundrum.
We keep a low profile, yeah. But no, really, Matt pretty much said everything. I've been doing this gig for over 20 years. I am a Mainer. I was born in Bangor, so I should get some brownie points for that. Spent a lot of my youth up in the county, picking potatoes as a kid, so I've got a pretty good work ethic. Been down here for a number of years. Yeah, this is just a great opportunity for myself, and I really am excited about getting to know the people of Cumberland and working with the council, and certainly my door is always open. I hope you all stop in and say hi. And if you have any, if there's anybody watching from Cumberland, stop in and say hi. If you have questions about your property, I'll be more than happy to help you figure out things. So thank you very much.
Great. Is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on this particular agenda item? Okay. Any council discussion?
Welcome.
What does he like to eat and drink?
Bob.
Clint, don't go anywhere. Jen's going to have
Great,
to swear you in, and council will have to take a vote.
If there was a motion, that'd be, I would take a motion if there is one.
I will give you a motion. I move to appoint Clinton Sweat as tax assessor for a 3-year term.
Second.
All right, a motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. All right, Jen, over to you.
You have to be behind the podium, but then we can be in the light instead. Whenever you see statements, you can agree or not. Tell everybody the same thing. All right. I think my mic is on, but it's not close to me. All right. Do you, Clinton Sweat, swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and of this state so long as you shall continue a citizen thereof, and that you will faithfully discharge to the best of your abilities the duties incumbent on you as the assessor for the town of Cumberland for a 3-year term according to the Constitution and laws of the state?
I will.
Congratulations. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Am I the only one clapping?
Yes, sir.
Golf clap. There we go.
There you go,
Yes,
buddy.
thank you.
Right here, too.
Congratulations and welcome. All right, next up, we have 24-120 to consider an act on setting the 2025 shellfish license allocations as recommended by the Shellfish Conservation Commission. Believe we have Mike Brown here this evening.
Madam Chair, Mr. Brown is under the weather this evening.
Oh.
And had reached out to advise as such, so I'd be happy to pinch hit in his place just to bring the council up to speed. I met with Mike and Chief Rumsey last week in advance of this evening, so hope Mike feels better.
I hope he's not feeling clammy.
Wow.
Aw, shucks.
Oh, shucks.
Oh, God. Sorry, everyone.
I just got that. Sorry, really slow, everybody.
Sorry, it's
yeah, let's hear it.
it's the sugar from all the candy this Halloween season. At the Shellfish Commission's last meeting, the group voted unanimously to recommend to the town council the following allocations of shellfish licenses for 2025. The resident recreational would be unlimited, non-resident recreational at 25, resident commercial 1, and non-resident commercial 1. The commission also expressed an interest in having the clerk's office track the number of senior licenses that are issued as a subset of the resident recreational and non-resident recreational licenses. As an example, with their memo, they identified that if 25 non-resident recreational licenses were given, then we would qualify that and say, well, how many of those are seniors? And there were 25 total. 5 of them would be seniors. So we'll try to track that at the clerk's office side of it. But otherwise, this is what they would recommend at this point in time. It was great to get brought up to speed by Mike regarding the efforts that the Shellfish Commission is working on to rebuild the resource in the town. And we may hear from them again in the future with other I guess you could say, endeavors that they're doing to rebuild the shellfish population here in Cumberland. So they've had some challenges in the past, but they're optimistic that they can turn it around. The water quality was a big one, and the town has invested a lot in stormwater management as well as the removal of overboard discharges and things along those lines that had taken place in the past that impacted the shellfish and the water quality within which, plus the green crab challenges that the town and actually the southern Maine coast has faced over the past few years.
Awesome.
Would anyone from the public like to comment on shellfish allocation licensing? No. Okay, any council discussion?
Just for clarity, what falls within the shellfish? So clams, that's it?
Primarily clams, but you could have, in this case, it would be for clams, but a lot of your oysters are, they're commercially harvested, and it's a challenge because of the water depth at Broad Cove. They like to be in water, and oftentimes with such a run out that they'll be resting in mud. So there's that, but you could have shellfish, mussels as well could be in there as well, but this is primarily on the clam side at this point in time.
Okay. And do we know how many licenses were pulled last year?
I did not receive that number, but I don't believe it was more than what currently is there. Oftentimes, you may find, at least speaking with Mike about it, a lot of license holders are primarily paper holders because it is such a challenge fishery at this point in time.
Okay.
It's a bummer.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay. Any further council discussion?
I have no concerns. I'll give you a motion.
Okay, I would take a motion if there's one on the floor.
I move to set the 25 shellfish license allocations as recommended by the Shellfish Conservation Commission.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay. All right, moving right along. 24-121 to hear a report from the Assistant Director, Stacy Mazer, on the Minerva Transition and Library Strategic Plan. It is my pleasure to welcome Stacy. Stacy, thanks for being here this evening.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, thank you so much. My name is Stacy Mazer. I am the Assistant Director at Prince Memorial Library. I apologize, Thomas could not join us tonight, so hopefully I will do him proud and share all the things that we're hoping to share tonight. And I really am hoping to highlight how the library is serving and engaging the community in new and meaningful ways. Alongside all of our programs and resources, our library circulation numbers show just how much our community relies on and values access to our materials. Over the past decade, we have seen an increased usage within our library of our books and digital resources. You, of course, see a slight drop during COVID. We all saw changes happening then, but we have definitely rebounded since then, and it's going very well. For the past 25 years, our usage between our two towns has been steady. Both Cumberland and North Yarmouth, we are a shared resource for both of our towns, and they continue to access our resources regularly. That shows through in our library visits. For the past decade, we have seen steady usage of our library, despite our very precipitous drop during COVID. We have recovered from that period and see lots of people coming through our door. And we also see an increase in our passport application processing. This is a unique service that we offer at our library. People can come in and with a very brief interview, get their passport application processed, and then that's a revenue generator for our library as well. The big thing that a lot of people know about our library, I think, is our events. We host a lot of multi-generational events, events for children, teens, and adults. And those are a lot of different things. Like you can see Melissa here offering a story time for the Main Street Children's Center. We offer a chess club for our children with Jay, our volunteer, our stalwart volunteer. He comes in and tries to teach children how to play chess. We have a partnership with Main Street Central Music, 317 Main Street Music, and Robbie here is shown playing music with our functional life skills students. We've invited Main Street Auto over to show teens how to work on their car. And ever popular Kelly's Barn Dance with Spruce Rooster was just this past summer, and our Star Party, which draws in hundreds of people to Twinbrook to meet the main southern astronomers and look at the stars together. But of course, a library isn't just the events and the books that we have, it's also the more modern things we're doing as far as digital acquisitions. So of course, you all know you have access to ebooks and audiobooks through Cloud Library. That's something you might be doing. Who here has an audiobook or an ebook maybe through Digital Main? Do you guys listen to books online, hopefully? Good readers. But we also went through and did a large project to digitize our historical documents within the town of Cumberland. We have one of the largest repository of historical documents in the state of Maine in Digital Main Repository, over 1,800 items. We see a lot of usage in our historical and genealogical information, and it is literally being used around the world.
So cool.
As you can see, lots of downloads, lots of access, and that really is something that we highlighted and saw a lot of during the pandemic. The town hall was closed, and we had people like Summit, who was trying to connect customers to natural gas, and they were able to process that information quicker because we had done all this digitization. We hope to continue this work. Digitization of our town documents is very important, so it's access to things like the town council agendas, town plans. What this does is it frees up our staff within the town offices when people can basically do that self-service of accessing those documents. More recently, in September 2023, we did a space needs analysis and we completed that. And we were really looking at maximizing the existing space usage within our public areas. We reviewed our space requirements, looked at our program needs and the flow to really determine a reconfiguration of our space to make sure that we were serving our patrons really well. We identified 4 sort of areas that we needed to focus on. That included sort of this activation of our central hallway to make it more of a multi-purpose hub. We wanted to make sure we were increasing access for quiet work areas and laptop users. That was an unidentified need. And we really wanted to make sure that we were reducing the congestion that we had sort of in our children's and teen areas and increase that ADA access. We wanted to be able to use this area for events and also offer kids a place to quietly read. Finally, the last issue that we really want to identify and address is we have a lot of problems with non-amplified speech and acoustical issues, and we're looking at addressing that as well. So far, the library has committed around $33,000 on reconfiguring that central hall like you just saw, and that includes additions of new individual tables and a computer bar, including new seating in our children's area. And then this year, we'll be spending an additional $20,000 of passport revenue to add acoustical paneling to both the Prince Room and that main hall that we have. While we were doing all that, at the same time, we were getting ready to join Minerva. And if you don't know, Minerva is a 60 library consortium that share their collections through a van service. They go all around the state with that little van. And we really had to get ready for this by basically rebarcoding every single item in the library and giving every single person a new library card. So we started that process, and really what we did is we looked at our collection and we removed anything that was maybe outdated, old, worn, lost, damaged, and we reduced our collection size by about 12%. Why barcode an item that you don't need to keep? We started that process, we got through our nonfiction collection, and then we tried to have some fun with it in March. We basically got together a bunch of teams of both staff and our friends and advisory board, and they came together and they formed these really awesome teams, and then they would work on specific sections in the library, all trying to get through all this massive amount of work that we had by the end of May. And they did it. We went ahead and rebarcoded the majority of the rest of the collection. All we had left at the end was sort of our fiction collection, and we sort of poked around at that until the end of August. So at the same time, like I said, we were also needing to reissue library cards to everybody. We started that in January with a really awesome library card sign-up week. We had these great donations from our local businesses, some gift cards, and then our advisory board and friends also put together some really great gift baskets for people to put their name in for. We had 600 card signups that week. All told, for right now, we're at 3,000 cards. Does everybody have their library card? I have mine. I hope you have your, yeah, Linda, good. So that sort of takes us to right now. We're working on a strategic plan. So really what a strategic plan is, it's a sort of a roadmap that we put together for a 3 to 5 year window. And we want to really be responsive to the community needs. So we asked the community, what are your aspirations? What are your goals? Tell us what you want. And then we work on putting together basically what we think we can respond with at the library to meet those needs. We do that through a number of different ways. As you maybe know, we have a community survey going on right now. We are at 720 responses right now, which is fantastic. And we are also going to be hosting some listening sessions. They are on Thursday, November 7th at 6:30 at the North Yarmouth Community Center. Friday, November 8th at 9 a.m. at PML. I hope you're writing this down. Saturday, November 9th at 11:30 at West Cumberland Hall. And you can register for any of those online, and we really do hope that some of the council would join us at those. We'd love to have you join us. So then we'll take that survey information and those listening sessions, and we'll synthesize it together and review it and analyze it, and then hopefully, within the next couple months, we'll be working at drafting that strategic plan. We have a team of around 12 community members from North Yarmouth and Cumberland that are working with us on that, and hopefully we'll be coming back to you in February to present that plan. And of course, we hope that that's going to be helpful for the comprehensive plan as well. We know that's a big, huge task that you guys are planning to tackle here in the next year. Any questions?
Before we go to council discussion, are there any folks in the audience who have a comment or wanted to ask a question of our amazing assistant director? No. Okay. Council discussion. Questions for Stacy.
I just had
Go to it.
more just a curiosity on the passport applications. How much roughly revenue is that a year?
So we get $35 for each application, but then we have to take out the cost of the staff time, the postage, and the supplies.
That,
Roundaboutly answered. So if you were to do the math on that slide that I showed you, you could maybe all the way back. Nope, too far. There. 1,062 times 35 minus an amount. I don't know the exact amount, I'm sorry. It's good. It lets us buy furniture and put acoustical paneling in our library, so
great.
it's been a really good revenue stream for the library.
Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you.
I'm a big user of the library, and my children's love.
I'm going to go back to this photo.
What?
I'm going to go back to this photo. I really like this one.
It is a good photo. My children use the playroom all the time, and I check out books quite often. But a quick question about Minerva, just out of curiosity, how have you seen like an influx in people getting or residents getting books from other places, or do you feel like it's getting maximized from when you implemented it to now?
Yes. So we launched at the end of August. The response was almost immediate. We did have that little window where the state hadn't yet started the van courier system again.
Yep.
We set up for 4 days of van courier system, so we are getting books every day, basically.
Okay.
And we have a lot of books coming in. We're very happy to see that our community really is using that service. There is a little bit of a learning curve because you have to learn how to request the book through the new system. And so just like for our staff having to learn a brand new software system, our patrons are as well. And our staff have done such an excellent job of working with the community and with our patrons when they come in, helping them learn that system. They're really quite amazing.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, please.
So I didn't know that the library did passports until I read through the packet, and that's super cool. So I will be patronizing the library instead of heading down to Staples or wherever to get that done.
We're a lot nicer. People tell us that. We get told that we're one of the nicest places to get your passport.
Excellent. I took the survey a while back, and I appreciated that it was kind of just the right length. It went deep enough, and the options available for choices, it didn't feel like you were leading me anywhere. It was very open, and I could just pick whatever I cared most about, and there's something for everyone. And so I think the survey is really well done, and I'm
Thank
looking
you.
forward to seeing what the results are.
I will share that with our team and with our staff, Kelly and Jennifer, who we worked really hard on it, so thank you so much.
Tell, thanks.
And does that close on November 2nd?
November 26th.
November 26th. Okay, great.
Which can also be found on our website. So if you're curious about where to take the survey, please go to our website, and it's linked on there.
November 26th. Okay, great. Yeah, November 2nd is very soon. So great that that's still open. Any other comments?
I look forward to seeing the results of the survey.
Me too. I'm fascinated. It's been interesting seeing some of the responses we've already gotten. And that will be publicly available. We'll, all warts and all, we'll make it.
Not a secret file.
No.
Great. Thank you, Stacy. Just big congratulations across the board. I don't want to go too much on the passport program, but I think it was Carolyn Curry processed my 2-year-old's passport application, and it was not easy for her. and
She is one of our
was a
star
champ.
passport processors, yes. All of our staff are the ones that process the passports. Our staff really do such an amazing job. It is they have to go through state level training to be able to do that. So it's great that we have the staff that's willing to do that and the knowledge and expertise to do that.
And plus everything else that you do. So thank you so much. It's really a pleasure to have you here.
Great, thank you. And if you ever have questions, just please definitely reach out. I'm happy to answer them to the best of my ability.
Thank you.
Or anybody here, promise.
Okay, no action on that item, apart from thank you. Next up, we have 24-122 to consider and act on a consent agreement for property located at 14 Shady Run Lane. I think this is a bulkhead issue, if I am not mistaken.
Setback issue.
Yep.
I mean, it's more fun to
Light
say that it's a
encroachment.
bulkhead than a setback, but it's a setback issue. Yes, thank you, Bob.
It's encroaching on the setback.
Oh,
Evening. Dave Gulick, this is my
Hi.
wife Maria Crouch. We
Welcome.
live at 14 Shady Run Lane. The house that we live in was built 30 years ago, 94, 95, and we wanted to add a screen porch to it a couple of years ago. And so in an abundance of caution, we had a survey done by Sebago Technics. They basically overlaid the new survey on the original survey for the subdivision, and we found out that a corner of the house and the majority of the bulkhead are over the 50-foot rear setback line. So I talked to Bill Longley about it. Bill has been there, he's looked at it. We had the consent agreement drafted, and that is what is before you this evening.
it's kind of an unwelcome surprise when you're trying to put in a screen porch, right? Thank you both so much for being here. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to comment on this item before we move into council discussion? Okay, let's move into council discussion.
Madam Chair, the agreement also has 100% staff support to help move this forward for Mr. Gulick and Ms. Crouch. So it's unfortunately it happens.
Yep.
On occasion, and this is the remedy to get that through.
And it looks like you folks are taking care of the attorney fees as well, as part of that agreement.
If you could speak up a little bit, I'm a little hard of hearing,
Oh,
so that would be
I-
helpful.
Sure will. Usually people are telling me to do the opposite. I was just noting, as part of the agreement, that you were agreed to cover the cost for the town attorney as part of that. I just think
Yes.
that's an important thing to note as well.
Yes.
Other council discussion.
I noticed that your abutter is North Yarmouth. Did they have to sign off on this also?
No, North Yarmouth never came up in the discussion. I mean, it's you know, the house is entirely in the town of Cumberland. There is a kind of an unusual rear property line that
Right,
you
I
can
was-
see, and I think
looking.
that's what led to some initial confusion, is the point of that M in the backyard came down closer to the house than was anticipated.
It appears that the town line, though, is a straight line.
Yes.
I see what you're saying, Bob.
I don't have any issue with this application.
Yeah. I don't have any issue either, and I will give you a motion.
Is there any final council discussion before we take on a motion? All right.
I move to approve the consent agreement for property located at 14 Shady Run Lane.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay, thank you so much for being here and for coming out and giving us that lay of the land.
Okay,
And
thank you.
but you're
So
relieved to
the-
have this taken care of.
So question about procedure. So we need to be on this, we need to sign this. I gather Bill needs to sign this. What's the sequence of events here? Should we start the ball rolling and then?
And maybe a notary too, it looks like.
Yes,
I'll
notary.
defer to our town manager on this.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you could, you could probably contact Bill.
Yeah.
And just make arrangements to come in and get it signed, and we have notaries here in-house. So
Okay.
we can get that notarized, and then we can get it recorded at the Registry of Deeds and move on with your intended plans.
Okay, thank you.
But if you want to grab, give Bill a call in the morning.
And the check, should we hand the check to Bill?
Yes, Bill should be able to give you that.
Okay.
Let you know. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, congrats.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is 24-123, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on the refinancing of the Friends School of Portland conduit financing. Just a little bit of context for the council. We had a council workshop on this, and also had a great presentation from the folks at the Friends School. And tonight we are having a public hearing. Mr. Manager, did you want to hit that item from
Sure.
Mike?
Sure,
Just to
yeah,
give some clarity to the group?
I'd be happy to, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you.
At the workshop, Council Reeds had, as part of the discussion, had asked a question if there was, regarding specifically to the school zone on Route 1 and the impact that has. And he was under the impression that if the town had brought up, or if someone had brought up the issue of contesting having a school zone there, that there was a question that the Friends School might pursue a legal remedy to get out of that conversation. And I talked to Andy about it, and he made a number of calls, as he said he was going to at the last meeting, found that there was could not find anyone who had made such a representation. I reached out to former manager Bill Shane and asked him, and also there was not a threat to have legal action taken. Would there be a potential? Yes, but there was never anybody would have that opportunity versus, and in this case, it wasn't exercised or even threatened to be exercised. So I sent that information to the council so you could have that in advance of this evening, but I think it's important for the record to know that it wasn't a combative experience, I guess would be one way to put it. And then finally, circling back to the overall reason behind this is a tool, as the council knows, that the Friends School can take advantage of, basically get the benefit of the town's lending capacity, but not at the expense of, the town has no responsibility to pay or any cash outflow. It's really just allowing the Friends School to take advantage of advantageous funding mechanisms to save them a significant amount of money over the course of their final loan. So it's a good thing for good people.
This is a refinance.
Yes,
essentially.
it's a refinance.
I'll just note for the council that while Mr. Eads is not here this evening, he did send an email to me saying that he is fully in favor of moving forward with this. So thank you for sending out and looking into that. Thank you for your patience as well. And while he's not voting officially, he did want me to let everyone know that he was in favor of this. Okay, is there anyone from the public who'd like to comment on our public hearing? Okay, is there any council discussion?
Can I go ahead?
Oh, yeah, if you have something to say, sure.
Yeah, sure. I was just going to say I'm in support of this based on the last discussion that we had, and thoughts from Alyssa, thoughts from Matt, and kind of the dialogue we had all around. I have no issues moving forward with it. That's kind of where I stand.
Same.
I feel like this is an incredible tool and something that we can, if we can help education and education alternatives, especially in our own community, it's a great thing from my perspective.
I agree.
Mr. Vale,
I would give you a motion.
I'll take one.
I move to adopt the resolution and order authorizing refunding revenue bonds in an amount not to exceed $1.7 million, which is hereby fully incorporated in this motion by reference to the issued by the town to the Finance Authority of Maine for the benefit of the Friends School of Portland project as set forth in said resolution and order.
A mouthful.
Second.
Sorry. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
No.
Sorry, wrong pipe. I will call for a vote then. All those in favor? Sorry. Wrong pipe. All right, unanimous Brenda. I apologize. It's the first time I've ever had a seltzer before, apparently. Okay. All right. Next up, I'm going to talk about some turkeys. 24-124. Oh, thank you so much. It's our pleasure. 24-124, to consider and act on a mass gathering permit application for the 17th annual Turkey Trot to be held on November 8th, 2024. There have been 16 turkey trots before this, and I understand, just from some historical context, that the turkey trot has become wildly popular, and that is therefore one of the reasons why we may be instituting a 950-person cap this year, which is pretty cool, pretty exciting. And it sounds like we have some police and EMS protection in place should we need it. Is there anyone from the audience that would like to talk about the turkey trot? No. Okay. Any council discussion on the turkey trot?
Let's run with it.
I hope I make the cut.
And was there an insurance certificate in here?
I think I saw it.
It was that, I had never, if that was,
I didn't see one.
is that the measurement certificate, or is that,
It was not an insurance certificate, it was a measurement certificate.
okay.
The
Do we have an insurance certificate?
Did not see one.
We have not received it as of yet, Madam Chair, but it is forthcoming. We've been in touch with Race, but they know that they have to provide it.
Okay.
If you wanted to make it the approval contingent upon that, that would be a perfectly way to move forward if the council so chooses.
I would feel good about that. What do you think?
I would agree. I just, to my point earlier, I hope I make the cut. I mean, it feels competitive.
Register early.
Hope I
They
make
had
it.
946 last year.
So
Wow.
that was my question, because I realize it's an annual event and all, but, you know, when it says number of tickets available, same as 2023, that doesn't really answer the question. Expected attendance, same as 2023, doesn't really answer the question. So I'd like to see, you know, these applications going forward, people actually answering, you know, because we've gotten a lot of stuff where it's just sort of that, well, this is how, we've always just done this, or it's like, oh, yeah, it's Bob's house.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. And, you know, I think it'd be good for us right now, but also for people looking in the future, if they're looking back at anything, to have that specific information in there as opposed to the more general, well, everybody just sort of knows this and all on these applications.
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Please.
Councilman Magoon, to your point as well, oftentimes it's weather dependent. Last year, Thanksgiving was a gorgeous day. So Tuesday before it, they received a lot of, and also race day registrations. Whereas in past years, I think I ran it a number of years ago, and there was, if we were lucky, there were 200, and it was just it was what your classic wet November Thanksgiving day could be. So if it's a gorgeous sunny day, people are going to fill it up. So I think that's what happened last year because it was the largest event. I mean, that had 946. I think they had like well over 1,500 in Portland as well, and the different ones. So like I said, it can change on a dime depending upon its
Right, yeah, I mean, and not just this specific one, but I think in the past we've had sort of very fudgy
numbers.
responses. to some of these questions.
Yeah, we'll definitely, as staff, work
So-
to make sure we get a sharp answer on it versus
Yeah.
checking the wind.
Yeah, I think to your point, Andrew, too, it's like tough for someone interpreting it. You know, obviously Matt tees it up for us and we have some insight, but it's tough reading through this, right? When it's the same as 2023, it's like, what does that mean?
Right.
So it's fair. That's a fair assessment. And it's also just good to historically have something to point back to as we're moving through these types of things. But amazing for them. I think that's incredible that they've garnered such a following. I think that's really neat community participation. So aside from the insurance, I would give you a
Conditional
motion.
approval?
Conditional approval.
Yeah, is there any other council discussion? All right, I'd take a motion if there, sounds like there is one.
I will give you one. I move to approve the mass gathering permit. Do I say, sorry, hold please, do I say, under the conditions of a insurance certificate being
I would read the whole motion and subject to.
subject to approval? Okay.
Subject to a receipt of insurance.
Okay. I move to approve the mass gathering permit application for the 17th annual Turkey Trot to be held on November 28th, 2024, subject to the receipt of insurance for the event.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Yes,
Oh, sorry. I was not listening, and I was thinking you were calling for a vote.
that's okay. I am going to call for a vote. All those in favor? All right, unanimous, Brenda. Okay.
I was trying to move things along, that's all.
No, that's great. Okay.
The turkey trot. You should
Moving
join the
along
turkey trot.
The jokes are really bad tonight, guys. We can do better.
Okay. Oh, my favorite topic,
this is a good one.
invasives. 24-125 to accept 3 grant awards from the Maine Forest Service totaling $16,900 for treating invasives at Twinbrook, Twinbrook, $6,900, the town forest, $5,200, and Rhines Forest, $5,200. We have our esteemed chair of the Lands and Conservation Commission, Mr. Mike Schwint, here this evening. I'd also just like to take the opportunity to thank the incredible work of the forestry subcommittee as well as our town forester and just kind of the relentless pursuit of grants and managing the town forest. I know it is not a heavy lift to get any of that done. And this is really, really serious money for preserving, a space that is just so dear to all of our hearts. So, Mike, I don't know if you wanted to hit anything on here, but no pressure if you want to. But we always love to have you if you would.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Mike Schwint, Chair of your Lands and Conservation Commission. Under our ordinance, before we can accept any funds, we have to ask the town council to authorize us to accept them. So you may recall earlier this summer, we had a couple plans up for approval. Well, this is the net result of getting those plans approved. We got some money. Now we're going to be able to carry the invasive work a step further come next year. And so we ask you to authorize us to accept the three grants of $16,000.
Awesome.
Is there anyone else from the audience that would like to comment? Nope. Okay. Council discussion and questions. Go for it, Bailey.
I was just going to say, I always am in awe of how many things you guys find access to. I think it's really incredible. It's such a resource for our community that I think a lot of people are unaware that you guys do. And I just think it's amazing. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Mr. Magoon.
Mike, I forgot from the proposals that you put forward back in the summer, what percentage of the work for the treating invasives does this cover? that we're able to get grants from outside the town as opposed to taxpayer funds going towards? Do you remember?
When you look at the budget we have prepared, the work plans, we've got 50,000 committed for treating invasives this next year, next fiscal year, the one we're in. Some of it for work in the forest, some of it for work along the highways. And so that's the big part of our budget. This is supplemental to all that. So, yeah, it's basically a third again as much money as we had budgeted of town funds.
Great.
I think also just for a little bit of context too, for all of the LCC, I mean, there have been, I can't recall all of the grants that you have taken, but things like they've gotten grants for electric mowers and also really kind of making sure to liaise with Public Works. You know, we got 2 people from Public Works, I think certified, two, right? Certified to spray, so that we're not relying on vendors who, one, like, can really drown a piece of property in the chemicals, and instead it's like this incredibly like sniper approach to a lot of this work, and again, like relentless pursuit of grants across the board. I'm hoping Denise is going to hit the Keystone tree planting during new business.
Unless
Awesome.
Mike wants to do it now.
Let's stick to the agenda
All right,
items
all
if that's
right.
okay. But yeah, I just big thank you. We are just so proud of the work that you do. Yeah, I would take a motion unless there's any additional discussion.
Can we give you a motion? I move to accept 3 grant awards from the Maine Forest Service totaling $16,900 for treating invasives in Twin Brook, $6,900, the Town Forest, $5,200, and Rhines Forest, $5,200.
Second.
Giving it to Magoon. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? No. Okay. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Next up, we have another Lands and Conservation item, 24-126, to appoint Book Burns to the Land and Conservation Commission Forestry Subcommittee for a 3-year term. I had the pleasure of meeting Book at our new residence orientation night. Great guy, very interested in the great outdoors and the forest specifically. I think he'll be a great addition. Mike is nodding. I won't make you come back up here, Mike, unless you want to. Anyone else in the public like to? Nope. Any council discussion?
I would give you a motion. I love the name.
Good
It's a great name.
Yeah.
It's a really incredible name. I move to appoint Book Burns to the Lands and Conservation Commission Forestry Subcommittee for a 3-year term.
Second.
Oh my God.
That one will go to Bob.
Just like hold hands when you say it next time. Just do it together every time.
That'll go to second. Is there any discussion on the motion? No? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay, all right, great. Next up is sewers. 24-127, to hold a public hearing to set the sewer use fees for fiscal year 2025. I went through, so last year was our 10% increase. This year is 12%, and I think there's that very, very important for the folks at home to know that these are fees that are paid for by those using them, not the taxpayers of Cumberland. But it also sounds like, and I kind of went back through some notes from last year, that building up kind of the enterprise fund in the event that, because we cut into reserves if the revenues don't, sorry, I'm not articulating this very
If the
well.
revenues don't offset the expenditures, then you'd have to cut into the reserve funds. And then it also, in many ways, you're looking to fund future improvements, and there are anticipated larger expenses coming in the future as part of the shared sewer system with Falmouth, Madam Chair. And they're working on those numbers, but I understand it's going to be a substantial number in the future, probably three years out.
Okay, and
That's on Falmouth's side.
and that sounds, and is there, or was there a sewer appeals board?
As far as,
Well, so we had I went back to our 10% discussion last year, and Mr. Shane had mentioned that there might be some large projects coming down the pike. And at the time, he thought that it might be good to kind of bring, I guess there is a godfather of Cumberland sewers, Mr. Ralph Walton, and he kind of, the suggestion was that we look into some of those projects that were coming down the board to kind of to do some better planning. I don't think we ever did that. I don't know, Bob or Bailey, if you recall.
I remember this now that you're saying it. There was it was a gentleman that kind of spoke up during the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To kind of have a little bit of a strategic plan in order to temper some of the large increases which could be coming down the pike. And so it might just be something, even if we're not taking action, or we can take action tonight, but there seemed to be a little bit of not urgency, but something that we should really make sure that we're keeping an eye on that. And I'm not sure that we ever took action on having those dialogues following the rate increase last year. So it might just be good to revisit that to make sure that we're kind of planning for the future.
Yeah.
So sorry, that was very anecdotal information, and I would also be happy to pull some up and send it or bring it up at a later date. And it does sound like we have the good working relationship with Falmouth and with the Portland Water District. And it also seems like it's kind of a small group of users, like 1,400 or so, but we want to make sure that we're planning for the future, I think.
New schools have impacts, large users have a much greater impact than
Yep.
a single home has.
It's like 26
Minimal
households or
impact
something.
on a sewer system. It's the cumulative effect of decades of residential building have an effect. But, the quick effects are, a large business that moved into town to connect the sewer, an additional school, a housing project, those sorts of things. So, and in regards to Ralph really was involved with the design, spit that out, Bob, of the original sewer system. He worked for, I'm trying to think of their original name there before they got bought out by a national company. But he was a sewer engineer. So he's intimately knowledgeable of the ins and outs of the sewer system.
I'm uncertain if it matters, but on page 83 and I believe 85, it noted the former town manager's name
As a sign-off.
as a sign-off.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I'm assuming that needs to be modified, but to your point, Tig, I think that's obviously, I think we're kind of at a standstill right now, but I would also love to chase down a greater understanding of the kind of increases coming down the pipeline, so we have some more clarity as we move into the next fiscal year.
Yeah, I think the part that really kind of knocked my socks off is that in the initial email that Bill had sent, and I can send this around, that when he started, there had been no increase in sewer rates for 15 years, and that's a long time not to increase it, right? And obviously, 10%'s a hike, and 12%'s also a hike, right? So I think just to make sure that we're not going to, exactly. Thank you, Denise, for the hand gesture. Smoothing out the curve in the sewers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, something we could just look into in terms of longer-term planning. Okay. Is there?
Part of that not having a rate rise is associated with users coming into the system. It's additional revenue offset. At some point, you lose that additional revenue, it flattens out, so you have to have a rate increase.
Got it. Is there anyone from the public that would like to talk about sewer rates? Yes, please.
My name is Lonnie Allen. I've lived across the street for almost 60 years at 277 Tuttle Road. When I received your letter today about the increase, coincidentally maybe, I received a proposed water rate adjustment from the Portland Water District. And I'm just curious if their 5%, 5.2%, is included in your figures. Their increase is 5.5%. Your increase is 12.
12%.
That makes about 17%, the bill's going up. Any relief in sight?
It's a great question. I don't know the answer. I would imagine that they're two separate because we're setting this as a council versus they're a separate entity, but I will defer to our town manager.
No, yeah, I would agree, unfortunately. I think, because the water district has done their increases on more of an annual basis, whereas the sewer hadn't, as the chairman said, or the chair said, was that it had been well over a decade that that had been no increases. So unfortunately, the two are independent of each other. I know.
Coincidental.
Yeah, I would say I was not aware of that they were sending the mailer at the same time, but it is a unfortunate coincidence, would be the nicest thing I could say.
Can you elaborate on how you arrive at this new $7.40?
That was, if I may, Madam Chair.
Please.
That was work that was performed last year, and as part of a 2-year rate increase, and it was determined by the prior manager to look at the amount of revenues that are needed to try to keep up with where the fund balance needed to be for current and future expenditures from there. So in the future, we'll end up looking at, the big question that sits out there is what the cost is going to be from the Falmouth upgrades they're going to need to make. And then once we have what that number is, then we'll have to back that out over multiple years to figure out how we're going to be able to meet what that need is going to be. So once you know what that number is, to be able to meet that in the future, then you would try to moderate that in over a number of years to offset that, or through the series of years if they go out to debt, take on debt to pay for it. But that's, you'd kind of want to back it in and say, okay, if I know I needed to raise, let's say, $100,000 over the next 5 years, then you bank it out into $20,000 a year overall over the rates, and I know that's just a number that people can understand versus the numbers on the other side of it are much greater. But you try to look at that and say, okay, if we know we're going to have to pay for this amount, and Cumberland's share is going to be so much of that, then we could look at that and say, okay, well, we have this amount established in let's say in the enterprise fund that would help offset a good portion of that debt, but then we're also going to need to pay for the additional funding that's going to be needed to help offset that cost.
I think so.
Yeah, I know, there's a lot there, so sorry for the bad news.
Thank you for your time.
Councilor Douglas, yes.
Can I ask a question, Matt? It has to be decided on tonight, correct? Like, we don't have any more runway to push this off?
It'd be good to get that in place, because we are going to need to
Okay.
address the upcoming, maintenance and make sure we don't have a shortfall in there. I think not having any increase, we've done it, looking back through my previous experience, we hadn't raised rates in Cape for about 5 years, and then we just went on a multiple year, smaller adjustment because
Yeah.
we found our revenues versus our expenses, especially when you have an older system. At times, there are fractures that happen. Oftentimes, it's not at a convenient moment, and then it's also not inexpensive to make those repairs. So you need to have a kind of a healthy reserve fund in order to take care of those unanticipated repairs, but also to do your routine maintenance and maintain those funds. So you already have those expenses that we know, so we need to maintain a decent fund balance for that level. And then now, but not increasing it for a decade is a tough thing to try to
Yeah.
make out,
Yeah.
to try to close that gap with.
Okay, great.
And the other challenge is just numbers, quite honestly, with, 1,400 subscribers. It's, that's the tough part, is just, the one way you could look at it is to do an expansion of the service, and you could get more numbers, and spreads the cost off over more households, but,
And it's,
We'll work on that.
have to work on that, Councilor Vale, yes, thank you.
it's not linear, right? Like, I tried to get on sewer, and it was gonna be, I think, like, they did a number for me, and it was gonna be like $400,000 for me to get on town sewer, because it doesn't, because of
Extend
how
the
long
line.
the line would have to be, right? It's not, we're not talking like the natural gas line that goes down Main Street, right? It's more complicated than that?
Yeah, it would depend if you had a ability to tap in, like if it ran in front of your house, you could have have an entry point there, and then it's a question of running from the street to your house, and that's the user's cost
Right.
that ends up driving it.
Yeah.
Similar to, they're looking at on Harris Road with that water line conversation or water conversation at the planning board. It costs, X amount of hundred thousands per mile or $1 million a mile, basically, to run a water line. So, to serve that. So you want to make sure you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, or the largest number of subscribers for the distance run.
No easy answers.
I guess the one last thing I'll flag is just doing the math really quickly. 12% of 6.68 is 80 cents. 6.68 plus 80 cents is $7.48. Unless I'm not doing that correctly.
So you're saying the charge listed on the paper is actually less?
Yeah. Just want to make sure that's right, or we're projecting that correctly.
Yeah, it actually should be, 748.
Okay.
That was some fast math from both of you.
I would move to approve it with the condition that it's updated to the correct numbers.
Do we know which is correct? Is the percent correct, or is the dollar amount correct?
Good question.
Councilor Douglas, if it's okay with you,
Yeah,
I think it'd be best to keep it at the 740,
okay,
and we can make that adjustment, and it would be a little bit less, but,
11%.
It already went out to all the mailers.
right, so I think
Yeah.
I would keep it
Yeah.
at the $7.40 HCF.
Well, so it's basically 11%.
Yep. So we shaved a percentage off tonight.
Okay.
But as I said, we do anticipate that there will be, over the coming years, that there will be additional increases, unfortunately. But we'll know that more in advance as we get more information from Falmouth on that system.
Just for clarity, that's 10.7% would be the increase. Awesome. I will give you a motion.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay. I move to accept the town manager's recommendation of a 10.7% increase in sewer use fees for FY 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All right.
Just-
Oh, yes,
Well,
please.
just a question, how exact do we need to be in this percentage to match up to the mailer that already went out?
We'll use the rates that were identified here versus, if the percentage is off, then we'll use basically the dollar amounts versus the percentage amounts, because that's.
Your bill is
ultimately what
based
that-
on your meter reading.
Right, but so then, do we need, for the motion and sort of make sure everything's kosher, do we need to have the motion be the dollar amount? As opposed to, because it's like 10.77 something repeating, to get that exact.
If I may, Madam Chair, maybe the
Please.
motion could be as presented with corrections.
Okay. So do you want me to make it?
Okay, so maybe we'll have a new motion.
Okay.
Do I have to do anything with the or do we have to vote on the existing?
No, I think if you want to withdraw and then.
There you go. Would you like to
I
withdraw?
Can I
Withdraw my
withdraw
second.
my motion, please?
No.
And you
I
withdraw your
withdraw
second?
my second.
Okay. Brenda is watching and hopefully will have gotten all of this. If not, we will give you some more info tomorrow. Okay, is there a new motion on the table?
Andrew?
I move to accept the town manager's recommendation for an increase as presented in the sewer fees for FY 2025.
With corrections.
With corrections,
Yeah.
I give you a second. Sorry, Bob.
Do you have your hand up?
I did not have my hand up, but I think we should enumerate the 7.40 then.
If I may, Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Just a point of correction. If you look at the amount proposed monthly average, where it shows that in October of '23, it's $77, and then in October of '24, it's $86.24. And that's with the increase in the base fee ready to serve, plus the charge per HCF, or 100 cubic feet. The difference between the 86.24 and 77 is $9.24, and that's a 12% increase above the proposed monthly average. So it's a 12% increase over the proposed monthly average bill.
Okay.
So actually, everything is still
It is
still
right,
okay.
okay.
We're going to have a mad mathematician in here soon.
I know, but if you take, just as an aside, so the memo is actually okay. So you say $77 plus 12% equals $86.24, which is what your proposed monthly average is on the memo. So that's what your 12% increase is there.
That is so confusing. Okay. I recognize you're working off an old chart.
Yep.
That wasn't your instilled model, so I recognize that. Okay.
So it's looking at the average. So it's for an average user, they're looking at a 12% change.
Average user.
Yep. Sorry, it took me a second to
It was a
backwards
lot
up
of
the math
math
on that.
in a
So
short period of time, so.
I need one of those calculators. You know, the ones. you
TI
can-
87
No, I don't even like that. I like the big with the
full screen.
screen front flip.
So do we need to withdraw our second motion
And go back to our
and go
first.
back to
yeah,
our
I think
first
I just do
motion?
the first motion.
Okay.
That's the
Right.
cleanest. Sorry.
All right.
I think it's, yeah.
I'm gonna send you to the sewers.
Withdraw.
I withdraw my second.
Denise, would you like to have a try at this?
No, I do not. No, thank you.
With apologies from the manager.
All right.
You do it, Bob.
I move to accept the town manager's recommendation of a 12% increase in sewer user fees for fiscal-wide 2025.
Fiscal-wide.
Fiscal year. There we go.
Wow.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
No.
Right.
Sorry.
All right, all those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda.
Sorry about that, guys.
Guys, we are all in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. Let's go with that. Okay.
Okay.
Next up, all right, so I think this is the, kind of the third time we've seen this, or maybe that
Yeah.
includes ordinance, right? But 24-128, to consider and act amendments to Chapter 250 subdivision of land, Appendix A, subdivision review processes and flowchart, Appendix B, application of major or minor subdivisions, and Appendix E, conservation subdivision application submission requirements and checklist of the Cumberland Code of Ordinance as recommended by the Planning Board. So for context, just for those folks looking at home, this was some wizardry done by Bridget, our town planner, who kind of noticed some opportunities for improving and streamlining the application processes for subdivisions and to make it more clear to anyone how it kind of works with the conservation subdivisions and really make it like there's no kind of running away and you can't miss it. So thank you, Bridget, for making a clearer process on that. Before we go into council discussion, is there any public comment on this item? No? Okay, I'll open it up for council discussion. Sounds like the planning board was happy.
I'm glad we can make it real since we've talked about it so much. I think it's good. Like when you have an application, you know, now it's on the application. It's not an option. You will submit a plan for a conservation subdivision. So I think it's good. It will save time and back and forth and, you know, stuff coming up to the planning board where someone doesn't have their stuff ready to present. Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you, Bridget. Do you have anything to say?
Very briefly.
Please.
It's another step in moving us forward for conserving lands that have agricultural value and other value. It kind of lets people know that this is where the direction the town wants to go.
That's a great point. And it's in red, so you can't miss
It's
it.
in red, too.
Any other discussion? All right, I would take a motion if there is one.
I'll give you a motion.
Okay.
I move to amend Chapter 250 subdivision of land, Appendix A, subdivision review processes and flowchart, Appendix B, application for major or minor subdivisions, and Appendix E, conservation subdivision application submission requirements and checklists of the Cumberland Code of Ordinances as recommended by the Planning Board.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? No. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Thank you, Bridget, and thank you to the folks on the planning board. Yippee. Okie dokie. 24-129, to consider and act on forwarding to the planning board for a public hearing and recommendation amendments to Chapter 315-63, signs, Section 1.3, lighting standards of the Cumberland Code of Ordinances. I believe this agenda item has come to us for sign lighting around the Rusty Lantern, and this lighting kind of only impacts that particular zone, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Okay.
And it's due to the fact that the Rusty Lantern has, looking at least initially having a 24-hour operation over there, and review of many other illuminated signs found that they operate currently outside of the parameters of the current zoning. So this is trying to, and this is the only zone that such a provision applies.
And it's only for businesses that are open 24/7.
Yes, correct, Councilor Thorson.
Cool.
Seems pretty straightforward.
And it's also a safety issue.
You could bring your rusty lantern to find the rusty lantern when the lights aren't on, because it's after business hours.
Wait, what?
I'm sorry.
It's a pun night.
I know.
Oh, I missed it. Oh, Denise, that was really good too.
Thanks.
Sorry, guys. I'm so sorry to everybody at home for all of our bad jokes.
Meetings are mostly boring, so I feel like someone's appreciating it. I'm gonna keep doing it.
Someone's doing it. Okay.
I will give you a motion.
All right. There's someone willing to make a motion. Let's hear it.
Oh, that's me. I move to forward to the planning board for a public hearing and recommendation amendments to chapter 315-63 signs, section 1 through 3 lighting standards of the Cumberland Code of Ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Do we have roughly, would that be on the maybe December planning board timeframe? Just,
I think it could be on the November.
oh,
Yeah, I
wow,
think they would have it on the November.
great.
So then probably we would anticipate it back to the council level for December and action at that point.
Perfect. They've started their pre-con, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Very exciting. Thank you, sir. Okay, moving right along, 24-130 to establish a comprehensive plan committee purpose and charge and authorize town staff to advertise for members. I would just like to note, like I did earlier in the meeting, that the emails that we received on this will include in the public record, and I will follow up with those folks tomorrow to ensure that that's what they would like to do. And thank you, of course, for folks who have sent in emails. We, at our last meeting, I think, had a very exciting discussion about the very hard work that Matt and Bridget have kind of put into this and kind of taking on board feedback for the establishment of this larger committee. Just to kind of do a really brief summary of what that proposed committee structure is for those watching at home. 9 of the citizens would be appointed by the town council utilizing its appointments committee process. There's an application which is very, very similar to kind of the standard application that we use for any committee appointments or applications. So whether that be something like the LCC or the Board of Appeals, we often ask to hear about folks a little bit and why they want to join the committee, and we thought we would emulate that for this as well. The breakdown of those 9 members, so we've got 3 from West Cumberland, 3 from the center, 3 from the Cumberland 4 side. The town council would appoint 2 members from the existing members of the council, as well as a member. The school board and the planning board would each nominate one of their members to serve. There'd be a chair and a vice chair, and then we would also be looking for 2 student members who would be appointed by the town council. At our we had a TRICOM meeting, which is a meeting of the Cumberland Town Council, the North Yarmouth Select Board, as well as the MSAD Board of Directors last week. Was it last week? Yep. And we asked them if they would be willing to partner with us on advertising for those student members so that we can get involved in kind of their newsletters and, send home. So we hopefully get a couple of students who would be interested in being a part of the process, which is fantastic. And that's kind of an overview of the larger structure. And of course, The comprehensive plan in its kind of intention is something that's state mandated for us to do every 10 years. The last update was in 2014, so the clock is ticking. We are very, very excited about getting this process going and really soliciting a lot of that community feedback. And before I talk everybody's ear off, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment on the comprehensive plan before we open it up for council discussion? Okay, then let's open it up for council discussion. Anything, Mr. Sturgis, that I missed in the quick little overview?
Perfect, Madam Chair.
I don't know about that.
Well
but,
done.
what are folks thinking?
I think you covered it.
I think she's asking what your thoughts are, Bob. What are your thoughts?
Like committee composition, general, anything?
Any edits to the, we also have the application in here. Do you feel good about the application? Just love to know. If people have any thoughts or concerns, or Councilor Douglas, unless Bob, you were about to go?
I think that at the end of the day, we're going to be, the people who are going to serve on this committee are people who have the time to put to it. It's not for lack of desire by anybody's part, but I think once people see the time constraints and the involvement, I think the pool will get narrowed pretty quickly. So,
Awesome.
Councilor Douglas?
I think, so I have no issues with the application. I think, we had gotten some emails earlier about concerns about there being a school board member. And I kind of pinged Matt earlier about that, just trying to get some insight into compositions from prior year's plans. And in some kind of chatter with him earlier, he had brought to my attention that, which I felt is worth noting, and Matt, feel free to kind of tell this better than I am, but 70% of the taxpayers, or 70% of our tax, 70% of our taxes come from the school, so they're go to the school. So they're a major stakeholder in this conversation. So I think there's value in the inclusion. I don't have any opposition to it. I'd love to hear if others have thoughts on that, but it was just something that was kind of brought up in dialogue over email today from some residents that wrote notes in. So I'd love to get insights into people's stances there.
Personally, I would prefer sticking with 2 planning board members like we've had in prior years, particularly since they have that insight into land use and zoning and their experience with it. We do have 2 students, so from like the education aspect, I feel like it kind of hits that. I'm not particularly excited either way about having the school board as part of that necessarily. I mean, I'm thinking more of like, if it's a community member who wants to join and they happen to be on the school board or happen to be a teacher or something like that, then sure. But I don't know that we necessarily have to reserve a spot in particular for a school board member, just because, they're basically dictating where 70% of our taxes are going.
Yeah, I think my thought there was the value add is that they are, like, it's interesting. Like, I'm sitting on the building committee right now as the town council liaison, and you serve as a resource, right, to kind of help with the dialogue and be most productive in the time that you spend together. So I think there's a lot of value in having someone from the school board, obviously a Cumberland resident, being there to kind of help answer or kind of find those resources, if that makes sense. So, like, for example, I have some working knowledge of, obviously, of how the town council works, the town office, so it makes it quicker for someone like myself to kind of dig in and know where to go for those resources. And I think that's kind of where I see the added value of having someone on the school board, and then compounded with kind of Matt's comment about it earlier about the 70%, and then also being the largest employer to the town. I think there is value there. I don't see it as a negative per se. But I wanted to just bring that up for conversation, to see what folks' thoughts were. So,
It was before my time on the council, but was there a council person, like a voting member of the council, when they were formulating the One Campus Plan, to maybe kind of give them guidance on the climate action plan and how their project would need to fit in with that? I'm guessing not, because here we are. But that's just my question, and it's not like oh, this is how it was done before. I'm curious, really, is this going to be a shift to where from now on this is going to be a thing?
yeah.
And if it is, it needs to be a thing. Like, we need to
Yeah.
commit.
Yeah.
But I'm just concerned about giving and giving, but then there's a wall when it comes to if we have any influence or whatever in school processes. And when they go to build and decide, I won't get into the turf discussion in this conversation, but clearly a violation of many facets of the climate action plan. And I feel like if there was somebody on the council who was there to represent, maybe it could have been taken down a different path
Yeah.
that was more encompassing of all of Cumberland's values. So that's just what I'm concerned about, is making sure that we have that. It's like a two-way street.
Yeah, but I think taking that first step forward, to your point, it's like I think there's a ton of effort, particularly from a collaboration perspective, just on my time on the council, from the dynamics across the school board and the town council. And I think this is just another step in that direction for collaboration. And I think, to your point, exactly that, like, if maybe there was someone on the town council, they could have lent an ear in that scenario, but what's done is done. There's nothing we can do in that particular scenario, but I don't think that should dictate how we move forward. I think it would be wise to look forward and not backward in this scenario. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, that's a healthy perspective. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, really, that is a
Yeah.
healthy perspective.
Yeah.
Let's hear another one.
All right, so I guess I can respond a little bit to what we both have said. This is not how we've done it in the past. This is a complete break from tradition, if you will. In the past, it was just sometimes just handed to the planning board with very minimal input from the town council. But I think we don't have to have somebody from the school board on this committee. We don't have to have somebody from the council on the committee. I think what we're really looking for is people who are engaged, who want to participate. And so I think that's how the optics of the lens that we're going to look at. We don't need somebody who's lived here for 65 years, or we don't need somebody who's lived here for 1 year. We're looking for perspectives who have the goal of where is this town today? Where will it be in 10 years? And what are the steps we can take to make sure that we're steering it in the right direction? And so we're creating this roadmap, and I think we analyze the who's and who's not going to be on the committee. We're going to frustrate ourselves. I think we just have to take a look at the applications and say, these are the people that we think are the best suited to do the job, and have at it.
So are you saying you'd rather have just a number of bodies and not allocate them to particular types of people? Or what do you, finish the thought for me? Help me.
Well, my personal thought would be I would have more than 13. I think we might find that may be too small, and I think we look at the applications and I'm not sure that we should be locked in, if you will.
Yeah, more people, more work you can spread around. Really, it's a lot.
Yeah, I've been on 3 of them, and there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of subcommittees, and it's Mike Schwitter just left, can certainly attest to that. In the Lands and Conservation Commission, they've got it seems like 40 people to work with, and heavy lifting. More people can do it.
I have a couple, I didn't mean to cut you off. Are you done?
I'm done, I'm done.
Are you sure? I have a couple thoughts. One is that I am always going to be the person that's going to advocate to come to the table with our partner groups. I feel as though I've personally worked really, really hard on making sure that I'm talking with the chair of the school board, talking to North Yarmouth, because what we do touches the other. You know, our next TRICOM meeting, we're going to talk about shared services. A lot of that comes together by wanting to collaborate, and I think by giving them a seat at the table to, I mean, even if it's just letting us know what their updated enrollment projections look like, right? I mean, those are things that, you know, they have access to that data, and it can be useful data for some folks to understand kind of what the school's plans are, right? And, you know, because that doesn't necessarily mean that they're influencing, but it's just information, background context to have, you know, what's going on at the school level, what their space needs are, especially if there were opportunities for sharing spaces or sharing services, which would be a good thing for our budget, because the upcoming TRICOM meeting is to look at how we can all save money together by having that collaboration. So personally, I'm a big proponent. I think anything that we can be doing to have those dialogues is good. Bob, I totally hear you on having a lot of good volunteers. The only part that makes me uncomfortable is that I want to make sure that we have that breakdown of people from the different regions of town. I think that's really important. I think there's equity there. I think it was really well thought out to have the 3 from West Cumberland, the 3 from the center, and the 3 from the Foreside. That's how, also reflective of kind of how we do it on the council with the seats, and I think that's just sort of a good standard. One other thought, because we also haven't put the application out there yet, so we don't know how many we're gonna get, and hopefully we're wildly kind of overwhelmed with applications. Would there be maybe some kind of possibility for like encouraging folks to get involved at the subcommittee level, or, you know, if we get a lot of really interested applicants, we do make our decision around, you know, those numbers, and then we can, you know, encourage the other folks to get involved at the subcommittee level. Would that be an option? I don't know, Matt, I've never been through one of these before, like if that's a common problem to have with having too many applications for the allotted spots, and if there's a way to make sure that those folks are still included in the process.
That's a great question. The one thing you always want to consider is any and all meetings will be open to the public. And a lot of that would be, and there'll be specific outreach as well when it comes to that. And a lot of the heavy lifting is making that outreach to, you know, different stakeholder groups within the community, you know, or looking at specific areas that the committee wants to work on, you know, elder issues, like you could say, you know, youth programming, things along those lines, areas that are there, and trying to make sure you're reaching out to all the different constituencies that are in the town. But again, all of those are open, and a big part of that is the public process to try to get as much input as you can. So that's something you always want to consider. The challenge with having a huge committee is, you know, having 18 or 19 calendars go to one calendar, and working on that, as well as, you know, unfortunately not everybody can make all the meetings when it comes to it too, and having that consistency of that. So, but if you look at it, I mean, if you get a big batch, I mean, there's different ways you can try to, you know, bring people in as well. If you knew that, you know, during the process of interviewing candidates, I mean, a good problem to have would be to have a lot of really good candidates, and then having to make that choice. But you could find areas where someone may show that they've got an interest in a certain area, and say, okay, let's mark that down, and make sure you reach out to Miss Jones because she's interested in lot sizes and residential uses and specific zones, and say, okay, let's make sure we reach out to her on that area and bring her in as a resource. And there are other folks who may have specific training or experience in town in areas such as, like, you know, solar, things along those lines, that they may not be engaged overall, but they may be a great resource in specific areas. So you try to kind of encourage that interaction, bring that in, so the whole community does have a way to do it. The committee, in many ways, is the conduit between the people and the final document as well. So a lot of they're in many ways the authors of it, but in many ways they're a ghostwriter, because they're taking all that input from all the folks that they're bringing in, trying to, and then summarize that and move it into a usable document, so you can use that for the next decade to decide what, this, in the areas that you need to focus on, is shaped.
Great context.
That is kind of a segue into a thought I had. When you're talking about like the conduit between, kind of like, I guess, the experts in the community, I think, which I don't think I'm part of whatever committee, the nominating committee for things like this to pick people, but kind of, I hope that, like, kind of what Bob talked about before, like, not looking at people based on kind of their resume per se, or their expertise or what they do for a living, because that's what the budget's for. Part of this 150,000 is for specialized consulting services. So focusing on kind of the why, like in the application, like what are your motivations? Kind of like what wisdom do you bring? What experiences do you bring? Less so than like technical expertise, I think. Yeah, that's just something I think we should keep in mind when selecting people, because there's plenty of experts.
Yeah, I think that's right on the nose, and I think there are some good questions in here, like why are you interested in serving on the comp plan, and what knowledge do you believe would be valuable to the committee, and are there aspects of the comp plan that interest you, and anything else to share, And I'm so with you on kind of the why, because I mean, what I do during the day doesn't really lend itself super well to being a town councilor, which probably isn't fine, but whatever, it is what it is. So I think that's a great point. Sorry, it's okay. It's joke night. We can be self-deprecating. Any other discussion? And Denise, maybe a follow-up question. Is there anything that is in this application, or is there anything else that you'd like to see in here that's maybe not in here? And I have it big here if you want to look.
I'll look at my tiny little screen.
I think we've had good dialogue. I think we will pick 13 good people.
I'd love to hear from Andrew.
To answer your question, in that top little blurb where it talks about the total time commitment is estimated to be around 200 hours over 18 months, my first question would be, how often? Like, is it biweekly meetings, like that? Like, maybe just a tiny bit more specific in there so they know exactly what this is going to mean, like when those hours will be asked of them. Because if it's like on Wednesdays and, I'm out, sorry. So just having that up front would be, you'd weed people out who might end up not being able to commit after all.
In the past, the committee has set their own
That's good.
agenda. They've set their own meeting dates. They've
So maybe just the frequency then?
it's typically twice a month.
Okay.
If I may, Madam Chair, and you may find that at certain points of the process, there may be more meetings needed, and others there may be less.
Okay.
And it depends upon which areas that you're working on. So, there may be a Saturday, if you're doing a community outreach event at the rec center, you're having a listening event or a community, like a potluck or something like that, to reach out to folks that may be on a Saturday on occasions. But oftentimes you're probably talking a couple times a month. It would be on average.
It's like bi-monthly and as needed. Which can mean way more, potentially.
Councilor Magoon, did you have anything to say?
I don't have too much to add. I think that, the breakdown laid out it's good to getting, different parts of the town, different stakeholders involved. If it was a unanimous consent thing, I might have different views, but it's not going to be unanimous consent, so it's not like we're going to be held hostage by, one interest group or anything like that. And I think it's a good place for people to come together and, see that it's a lot harder to make things happen than it is to just, you've got this great idea, but there are things that you don't know about that prevent that great idea from actually happening. And there are equally valid reasons that people might have that are, diametrically opposed or will impact negatively your plan, and that we all need to find a way to sort of move it forward. So I don't have any issues with, the school board, a rep from the school board being on there, I don't think is a bad thing.
I will also just point out, Counselor Eads, who is not here, did also email and wanted me to convey that he thinks it was a great job. He's very much in favor of the committee structure and plan, and thank you for all the hard work on this. So, thank you, Mike.
Lots of positivity
Yeah.
tonight in Mike's messages.
I'll give you a motion.
Great.
I move to establish a comprehensive plan committee, purpose and charge, and authorize town staff to advertise for members.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, all those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay, finally, 24-131, to consider an act on canceling the November 12th council meeting. My understanding from our esteemed town manager is that this was the meeting that was on the 11th, which we kind of put a 12th placeholder in case there was anything to cover, and it sounds like there's not much to cover. Is that the case? Or is there? Has something happened? Is there a surprise?
I think you can hold off till the 25th, Madam Chair, and I think you should be fine.
The 25th of November?
Yep, which is
Okay.
other scheduled.
Okay.
We'll have a nice agenda for that evening.
Big and robust. I'm comfortable with that.
I'm fine with that.
And also Mike is comfortable with that as well. I have it via email. Any other discussion? Is there anyone from the public that would like to talk about us holding a meeting on a Tuesday and canceling that? Not at present.
I will give you a motion.
Okay, here it comes.
I move to cancel the November 12th town council meeting.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Nope. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. All right, new business. Counselor Magoon.
So the only real piece of new business is really just hammering home what Matt said earlier about voting. It's going to be most likely a busy day next Tuesday. Polls are open from 6 to 8. I strongly suggest if you're able and willing to come and vote early. It's really, really simple, really easy to come in. This Thursday is the last day to do that at 6 p.m. The town closes, but we did it last week, 2 weeks ago. It takes 5 minutes, if that, and all. But vote. That's it.
Thank you. Counselor Douglas?
Nothing for me.
Counselor Vale?
I've thought of that, Andrew, and I vacillate back and forth, but I'm almost inclined to go vote like I always do. First thing in the morning, there's something about coming down here and just being part of that process. And
If you're there midday, I'll see you. I'll be working the election, checking people in.
But I also thought to myself, you know what? Just go vote just stop in on your way home, vote, and move on, and get out of the, don't get in anybody's way. I haven't decided, but I will vote. So a couple things that have been thinking about. A lot of, I'm building a house down in West Bath. They're putting solar panels on their roof. And I really feel that we need to put some effort into communicating about community solar. And how can the town facilitate that? What's it look like? And we got a piece of land that might be worthy of that application. How many people would it take? How many homes could be served? The thing that I've noticed more that community solar is a way for people of modest incomes to benefit by offsetting their electric bills. So I think that we want to we want to protect our elderly, we want to make sure we have affordable housing. So this is just another tool in the box that I think is the responsible town government is, you know, why are you getting into this business? Well, why not? And so I think I'd like to have a conversation about that and a little bit greater analysis. There was something else I had, but it's, well, I'll touch base a little bit here. We are, you know, we need to be considering affordable housing. We've got, we had a conversation about TIF districts tonight. It's something that's important to me. I was listening to the radio as I was running from the job site to the lumberyard and back, and they were talking about now it's 85,000 homes that's we're short in the state of Maine. I'm a little concerned about where they get these numbers from, but the fact is that there is a shortage of housing in the state of Maine. There's a shortage of affordable housing in the town of Cumberland, and it's we're not going to stop talking about it. We're going to do something about it.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Thorson?
You might want to early vote because you never know when you might fall off a roof, and then you won't be able to go in that day. Or you get sick. I got sick last week, and it sucked, and I was in bed all day. So that's something I think about is what's the worst thing that could happen is I won't be able to vote on voting day. So that's why I did it as soon as I could. So there's that. If you're paranoid, might want to consider it.
All right.
So thanks to Matt, sorry, Town Manager Sturgis, for being the guest speaker at the Les Lions Club meeting.
awesome.
It was so cool to hear about your background and the Lung Cancer Association trek across Maine. That was so cool. And just at the end, you know, your door's always open. Come talk to me. Just so nice, so approachable. I think that it really came through, and I'm glad everybody was able to meet you. And good feedback. Everybody seemed to be really happy that we're in your hands. What else? So yes, the Cumberland Orchard, which is a subset of your LCC, had its fall planting day, which I can't believe it's already been a year since the last fall planting event / Arbor Day event. But the chair of the Orchard subcommittee, Jesse, he had been talking with Retree USA, I think it's called, but in this email it says Retree US, and got a grant for 100 fruit and keystone trees, and those were planted by 27 volunteers from Enterprise, had a big old van, stuck a bunch of trees in them, and they did all the planting. So it was great because it's hard to plant 100 trees. We did 50 last year. It took a while, and it was a lot. It was a lot. So it was great. There was an AmeriCorps volunteer, a rep from the USDA that does their regional farm-to-school grant management, Richard Hodges from Retree US, Jennifer Giuliano from MS 8051, who is a teacher, and also, I think, I'm going to get the club wrong. I think it's like Green Club and the Community Service Club or something for, I think, the high school. So she was there, which is awesome. And then a few other locals. They got 100 trees into the ground, a bunch of peaches, and then apples and mulberries. And there's a map online if you Google it. I think if you just Google the Cumberland Orchard, there's maps of the trees that have been laid out, or there's something where you can see them, and it's really awesome. And the orchard is probably like the biggest one in Maine now, like the largest public orchard. So cool. Because it's just like all these trees, and these are all grant trees. They're free. So it's really amazing. And then the extras, I think they've already all been claimed, but there were a bunch of extra trees at the library for just anyone in the community to take and plant in their yards. So that's awesome. So now they just have to stay alive. And a lot of them will probably get lost to freeze and mice and whatever else, but there's so many other seedlings to put in the ground, and so it's just going to be a process to figure out what thrives there and what dies and doesn't work out. But the idea is to have the right plant in the right place and have minimal babying, and it'll either work or it won't. But That's the cool part about grants is, and like we experienced earlier, the LCC is always looking for them. And so I'm sure this will not be the last of our giant batch of trees. And when there are spares, they go out to the community. So that's really cool. What else? I did have a question we're still on track for the reval, yes? And so my question, months, my question was like estimated start month, end month, and then that estimated first bill with the increase. Can you remind me what that was?
We're probably pushing out 1 year,
Okay,
just as we get Clint on board, but we're looking at starting in probably the fall, like a year from now.
okay,
And then notifications in the late spring, probably looking at informal hearings through the summer, and then fiscal year 27, which would be, actually fiscal year 28, I think, or 7. Yeah, it'd be the fall of 27, basically, would be the first tax bill that would have the impact.
okay. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, wait a second. Fall of 26, fiscal year
Okay.
27, sorry.
That's what I thought the
Yep.
original timeline
Yep.
was.
Yeah, sorry, I pushed it. Yeah, Andrew. Yeah, yes, you're looking at fall of 26, because we're in 24 right now.
Okay,
So it'll take about a year to do that. But Clint's got the experience to do it, but
yeah, that's
it
awesome.
just pushed us a little bit because John was planning on doing that this year, and would have been next fall, the bill, so it pretty much pushes it out a year.
At some point before that, do you think Clint would be willing to do like a PowerPoint presentation? Like, kind of, I
Lord,
know
yes.
it had been done before for a previous one, just kind of like for the community, like a very low level, because I needed to walk through of just how this works and what it all involves.
If I may, Madam Chair,
I think it's a
Yeah.
great idea.
they did listen, you've got to PR the heck out of that. You
Yeah.
need to share that information and push it out there, just because it's no mystery that I live in Gray. I somewhat pay attention to the town that I live in, and they did a reval, and none of us knew about it.
Wow.
And so I got a letter in August thinking, hey, your property value doubled. And here you go. And it's like, well, I didn't see that coming. And I wasn't the only one, that it happened with. So, and I've done, personally or professionally, I've done 3 of them in my own career. And it's like one of those things, you say it, you tell it again, you tell it a 3rd time, and you say it a 4th time. So you've got to get that out there. We've got the great work that Whitney does through our socials and our different areas of outreach that we do electronically. Come to the council, give them updates. That is of critical importance because you're talking about serious numbers, and the numbers that we're looking at today are not inconsequential. And it's been 8+ years since the last one was performed. So, yeah, you've got to let people know that they have this in their future coming, because if you don't, no one likes to have that surprise, but B, you want people to be able to plan ahead. But it's, yeah, a little information is okay, but a lot of information helps that process a lot more.
So do you think we'll have like a dedicated workshop that could be streamed where it's basically just like, this is a reval.
Sure,
This is
yeah,
what
that's
it
right.
is. This is how it goes, and this is how, the ratios affect this and that.
Yeah, that's,
Like-
you gotta launch it. You basically, as you're coming out into it, and you say,
Okay.
okay, this is what we're looking at, like, properties are assessed at this amount of % of market value today, and the process of what we're looking, this is what the process is gonna be, and lay out your time schedule as to how it needs to be performed. Okay, we're looking at doing, and it depends upon the scope and scale of the inspections that you're going to do. It could be a full measure and list. I don't think, I'm the manager, I'm not the assessor, but I know John Brushwine did a heck of a job on the inventory. So I think you've got a really good data set that sits on your assessments in town. So you could probably do a less invasive, sorry, it's a bad term to use, but a less invasive, meaning you don't have to go and knock on everybody's door and disturb everybody, where you can look at that and do more of a controlled data set look at. And then say, okay, then you can apply that to it. The hardest part of what you're gonna find on this reval is gonna be land values are gonna be a bear. And then your cost schedules, updating your, your building costs and your things along those components. That's not the hard part. The hard part is the land value, because that's really the fluctuation in market value. Because, that's really what it comes down to. It's about location, because I could talk about this for a really long time. but,
Clearly.
Okay.
Suffice it to say, Clint does a good job on that, and he has the scar tissue from just doing one in Cape to prove it. So I think he'll take what he learned from that process and do it. But we've already had those conversations during the interview process with the candidates who went through it, who's ready to get that going. So
That's good. Those are applicable questions.
yeah, it's pretty important.
Yeah.
It's pretty important.
All right, cool, thank you.
Thanks for the question.
Last thing is, I'll do this for you, Bob. We have an ordinance committee meeting on November 21st, which is a Thursday at 5 p.m. And it would be cool if anyone who's interested would like to come. We'll be talking mostly about solar and fireworks, I think. Fireworks, yes? More
Well,
fireworks?
Solar, fireworks, and we'll start conversations on the 2 senior tax programs.
Cool. So yeah, it's good stuff. And if you're curious about how it works, what the rationale is, what the thought processes are, please come. Or ask Bob, he can fill you in. That's all I have, which was a lot.
No, it was great. I echo your concern with the gap in understanding the revale. We used to throw around the word mill rate, and people don't always know what the mill rate is. I didn't know what the mill rate was before I was up here. You're not off the hook yet. So Mr. Eads has provided me his new business. So Mike would love us to recognize Cumberland native Brian Bickford, who has been named the Little East Conference Coach of the Year. He is a former Greeley golf coach. He served as 15 years as the director of golf at Valhalla. He's the head of the Maine Golf Association, and he is appointed as the head golf coach at the University of Southern Maine in 2023. So congratulations to Brian. I'm sorry, I almost misidentified you as the Little League when you clearly are a golf practitioner. So congratulations to you there. And then just one note, I think Matt hit this during new business, but Whitney has reiterated that the new thing about this election is that polls open at 6 a.m. So that's new. So that's very exciting. And Bob, I'll probably be there with you voting early, because I just get like all the goosebumps on doing it on the day of. But yeah, it's because I'm a loser. So is there a motion to adjourn?
You don't have any items?
I don't have any items, no. All right, no.
So moved.
All right, all those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Whitney. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, folks
that
who came
over.
out.
You know what your thoughts are.
Yeah.